Chapter 2797, The Scion of 5. The young man who grasped the space and time glanced at the 5 of them indifferently. Even though the 5 of them already possessed the battle prowess of the primordial realm through the formations, the young man was not fearful of them at all. Instead, he showed faint disdain, as if he looked down on them slightly. "I've completed your request. Don't forget about your promise," the young man said nonchalantly. "Scion of 5. You don't need to worry at all. We will definitely uphold what we've promised to your 5. sect." Kong Feiying laughed aloud. "That would be for the best." The young man known as the Scion of 5. Nodded in satisfaction, about to withdraw his world of heaven and earth. Once Chu Tian and the others began fighting and erupted with the power of the primordial realm, his world of heaven and earth would be as flimsy as paper, even though it could temporarily stop late god kings. However, when Jian Chen heard the 5. sect, his eyes flashed. He turned towards the Scion of 5. in surprise and asked, "Are you from the 5. sect of the Star Brilliance Plane?" Gong Rui's seemed to think of something from that. Suddenly, he laughed aloud. "Ha ha ha, that's right, the Scion of 5. comes from the 5. sect, one of the 10 great organizations on the Star Brilliance Plane. Moreover, his status in the 5. sect is extraordinary. He's the chosen scion of the entire sect. His status only pales in comparison to the sect masters. Yang Yutian, don't tell me you're trying to claim you have some connection to the 5. sect at a time like this?" The Scion of 5. said nothing. He hovered in the air and stared at Jian Chen calmly. Jian Chen came to a realization. He ignored Gong Rui's and said to the Scion of 5. "No wonder you could comprehend both the laws of space and the laws of time to God King at such a young age. So you actually come from the 5. sect. The Point Cloud Venerable of the 5. sect is one of the few experts of this day and age who has comprehended both the laws of space and the laws of time to Grand Prime. It's rumored that he received the guidance of the Space-Time Elder in the past, giving him extremely great mastery over the way of space and the way of time." The Scion of 5. changed slightly in expression. "You actually know my master received guidance from the Space-Time Elder in the past? That's not something an independent cultivator should know. Let alone independent cultivators, even the descendants of peak organizations won't be able to come into contact with that information unless they've achieved sufficient status. Just who are you?" "Your master. The Point Cloud Venerable is actually your master." "Now that's surprising." Jian Chen was rather taken aback. He could not help but study the Scion of 5. properly. "The Point Cloud Venerable has helped me out in the past, even though I could tell he had other intentions in mind when he assisted me. Though, I must admit, the assistance he lended me back then was of extremely great use. Since you're the Point Cloud Venerable's disciple, I'll spare you today for the Point Cloud Venerable's sake. However, you may have escaped death, but not punishment." With that, Jian Chen directly struck. In that instant, he became surrounded by powerful sword qi in the form of dazzling, scorching white light. Afterwards, it turned into a huge strand of sword qi that stabbed towards the Scion of 5. The strand of sword qi was completely condensed from the laws of the sword. Even though it was just at the level of mid-god kings, the sword intent it contained was powerful enough to influence the Scion of 5's world of heaven and earth. Under the powerful sword intent, the world of heaven and earth trembled violently. The space twisted viciously as the flow of time was forcefully interrupted. The Scion of 5 changed in expression. He immediately pointed at the space before him and said gently, "Worlds differ. Inches away, but worlds apart." As he pointed out, the entire world of heaven and earth underwent a drastic change. This independent and incompletely miniature world seemed to split in two in that instant, separating Jian Chen and him into two completely different regions of space and time. The result was they seemed less than 100 meters apart, but in reality, the space between them was under influence, elongating the distance between them such that it became hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers, tens of thousand kilometers, or even longer. The time it would actually take to cross through this region would be incalculable. That was because not only did this touch on space, but there was interference from time too. The combination and supplementary effect between the laws of space and the laws of time truly is profound. It's just a pity that your cultivation is too low. You can't restrain me. Jian Chen's voice rang out. The sword qi under his control suddenly exploded with light, as if it could destroy space and cut through time. It tore through all the restraints of the world of heaven and earth like it was unstoppable, reaching the Scion of 5 Point instantly. In that instant, the Scion of 5 Point was unable to maintain the same composure as before. His face changed drastically, overcome by shock. The power of space around him surged violently, as if he was trying to forcefully alter the space around him so that he could avoid the sword qi. However, the sword qi's power had completely surpassed the laws of space he had grasped. Even the power created from a combination of the laws of space and the laws of time was unable to influence Jian Chen's sword qi at all. Boom! With that, Jian Chen's sword qi slammed against the Scion of 5 Point mercilessly. It did not penetrate the Scion of 5 Point like something sharp. Instead, the sword qi automatically exploded and it approached the Scion of 5 Point under Jian Chen's precise control. In the end, it turned into a ball of energy and light that contained the same sharpness of the sword qi and sent the Scion of 5 Point flying viciously. At the same time, the Scion of 5 Point's world of heaven and earth completely crumbled and collapsed. The Scion of 5 Point had been blasted far away with a pale face. The luxurious robes on him had already been reduced to dust, revealing a set of tight-fitting armor. The armor was a supreme quality saint artifact, but it had already dimmed now, covered in tiny cracks. Why, you actually defeated me in a single attack. That's impossible. That's completely impossible. 1,000 meters away, the Scion of 5 Point rose up in the air in a horrible shape. His face was filled with disbelief, as if he was unable to accept this. He had learned about Yang Yutian's various feats in the Two World Mountains before all of this, and he had gained a rough idea of Yang Yutian's strength too. He was confident that with his combination of the laws of space and the laws of time, even defeating Yang Yutian was not impossible, let alone trapping him. However, never did he think that reality would be so cruel and so difficult to accept. He could not even withstand a single blow from Yang Yutian. If it were not for the fact that the attack did not contain killing intent, he would probably be dead, or close to death. To the other side, Chu Jie, Zhou Ji, Gong Ruiz, Kong Feiying, and Zhao Wenbin were shocked by how Jian Chen had defeated the Scion of 5 Point in a single attack. The battle prowess that Yang Yutian demonstrated right now seemed to be even greater than what he possessed in the Two World Mountains. However, they had already fallen into formation, already possessing the power to contend with the primordial realm. As a result, even though Yang Yutian's performance had taken them by surprise, they did not show any fear at all. At the same time, Jin Hong sat on his throne with his eyes shut, resting in the divine hall of the Dire Wolf clan in the 100 Saint City. He was not cultivating, but constantly keeping an eye on the movements of the divine halls that belonged to the Chu family, Zhou family, Gong family, Sangqiong clan, and Yuqiong sect. He was watching over Yang Yutian in the 100 Saint City so that he could prevent Chu Jie and the other leading figures from secretly slipping out and using the primordial realm formations against Yang Yutian. However, just as the Scion of 5 Points world of heaven and earth was destroyed, Jian Chen's surging sword qi was freed from the restraints of the world of heaven and earth and leaked into the Dark Star world. Jin Hong seemed to sense it in his divine hall, and his eyes suddenly snapped open, immediately shining brilliantly. With a sway, he appeared on top of the divine hall instantly, directly throwing a punch at the Chu family's divine hall from afar. Boom! Jin Hong immediately left a 10-meter deep dent in the Chu family's formation. Afterwards, the senses of Jin Hong's soul flooded in through there. Within the divine hall, he discovered the sacrificial god king disguised as Chu Jie. Both his presence and appearance was exactly like Chu Jie's, but he was still a sacrificial soldier after all, let alone one that had consumed 100 tribulations God King pill and only had the lifespan of a century. As a result, under Jin Hong's close inspection, the sacrificial God King who posed as Chu Jie immediately had his cover blown. What a substitution! Jin Hong was furious. His face darkened, and he immediately charged out of the 100 Saint City. He did not even bring a single sacrificial God King with him, rushing towards the place of the battle alone. The world of heaven and earth has been destroyed. The disturbance here will probably reach the 100 Saint City very soon. We don't have much time. Let's do it and finish him off quickly. To the other side, Chu Jie suddenly bellowed out and launched an attack without any hesitation at all. The power of several hundred sacrificial god kings gathered in him through the assistance of the formation. He swung the sword in his hand violently, and the weapon immediately erupted with light, conjuring a huge strand of sword qi 100 meters long. It slashed towards Jian Chen. His attack contained the power of the primordial realm. The tremendous might within it immediately churned up the sky as the colossal pressure flooded out in the surroundings, alarming all cultivators within a range of several hundred kilometers instantly. In the instant Chu Tian struck out, Zhou Wenbin, Zhou Ji, Kong Feiying, and Gong Rui's all took action as well. Immediately, 5 powerful attacks that had reached the Primaridla realm hurtled towards Jian Chen, sealing off all of his paths of retreat. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2798, Unkillable. Just as Chu Jie and the other 4 launched their attacks, the pale scion of 5 Point hovered in the distance, staring straight at Jian Chen. He had been extremely confident in his strength. He was just an early god king, but the combination of the laws of space and laws of time had elevated his battle prowess far beyond his current level. Even regular mid-god kings were not his opponent once he used the world of heaven and earth. Yet, despite his confidence, he had not even managed to last a single attack against Jian Chen. As a result, Jian Chen became almost unfathomable in his eyes despite also being a god king. Yang Yutian is just too powerful. I wonder whether he can survive the attacks from 5 existences akin to primordial realm experts, the scion of 5 Point thought to himself. He was rather eager, as if he wanted to witness Yang Yutian's true strength through this battle. On the other side, an undiscoverable sneer flashed through Jian Chen's eyes as he sensed the 5 powerful attacks around him. In Chu Jie and the others' eyes, these primordial realm attacks were what allowed them to stand and protect themselves within the Dark Star world, their greatest trump card against the Dark Star race. However, in Jian Chen's eyes, they were so futile. With the toughness of his chaotic body, the primordial realm attacks they had launched through the formations could not even touch a hair on him even if he stood there defenseless. That was because attacks at the first heavenly layer of infinite prime were no longer enough to damage his chaotic body. It could not even leave a scratch on him. However, with the scion of 5 Point spectating on the side, Jian Chen obviously could not display his primordial realm battle prowess. Just when their attacks were about to land on him, Jian Chen gripped a supreme quality saint artifact sword and stabbed out 5 times with lightning speed. Every single stab surged with light and was unbelievably fast. Especially when imbued with the laws of space that Jian Chen had purposefully lowered to God King, it led to an illusion where he clearly just stabbed out once, but 5 attacks appeared instead. Boom! 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 The 5 strands of sword qi collided with the attacks violently. With a great rumble, a terrifying storm of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings. The sword qi Jian Chen had launched was forcefully dispersed before the 5 powerful attacks, while the 5 attacks weakened slightly, worn away by the sword qi. Afterwards, they struck Jian Chen at the same time with their remaining might. Boom! Within the rumble, Jian Chen collapsed on the ground from the attack. His white robes had already been reduced to ashes, revealing an armor made from beast hide. The beast hide armor was also a supreme quality saint artifact, but under the 5 primordial realm attacks, it had become tattered. It was already half destroyed. I never thought you'd actually have a defensive supreme quality saint artifact on you. I've underestimated an independent cultivator like you. However, even if you have a defensive supreme quality saint artifact, it can't change anything today. It'll just make you last a little longer. Yang Yutian, have you ever imagined you would suffer a fate like this? Chu Tian laughed viciously. When they attacked Jian Chen, they had also used their primordial realm powers to disturb the space there, making it unstable, so the laws of space would be rendered almost ineffective. This was to prevent Yang Yutian from escaping. Chu Jia, why were you blabbering all that nonsense? The 100 Saints City will learn about the battle here very soon. Once Jin Hong and the others get here, killing Yang Yutian won't be that easy anymore. If we want to kill him, we need to be quick. Gong Ruiz said coldly. The power of the primordial realm gathered in him. He seemed to be merged with the many sacrificial god kings as he mobilized everyone's powers to launch a strand of sword chi towards Jian Chen below. Don't worry. Once we strike together, Yang Yutian will be dead for sure. Killing him won't take much time at all. He won't be able to last until his reinforcements arrive. Chu Tian laughed aloud before charging towards Jian Chen with everyone else from all directions. All of their eyes were filled with cold killing intent. They were extremely determined to kill Jian Chen. A sliver of cold light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes too. Today was supposed to be the day when he would kill the 5 of them. However, the spectating scion of 5 Point on the side prevented him from unleashing his true strength, just in case it would lead to unwarranted trouble. The scion of 5 Point is the disciple of the Point Cloud Venerable, while the Point Cloud Venerable has assisted me before. As a result, I obviously can't kill his disciple. However, if I don't kill him and unleash my true strength, he'll see all of it. Once news of it reaches the Dark Star race, it'll be extremely bad for me. My identity as the 5th Hall Master might even be given away. But if I continue to hide my strength, it'll be impossible for me to kill them today. Jian Chen weighed his options inside. As he did that, he clashed with the 5 of them again. In order to conceal his strength properly, he was forced to reduce the armor on him to dust and create a few wounds for himself, so he seemed heavily injured. Only with that could he avoid suspicion. Otherwise, if a God King emerged unscathed even from 5 primordial realm attacks, it would be far too shocking. Only those who had reached peak God King and ranked in the top 10 of the God King's throne could achieve such an astonishing feat. Looks like all I can do is capture the scion of 5 Point and release him when I leave the Dark Star world, thought Jian Chen. This was the only idea he could come up with. However, just when he was about to take action, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. In the direction of the 100 Saint City, he discovered a figure flying rapidly towards this place through the senses of his soul. He had used some kind of secret technique, allowing him to move startlingly fast. He had actually erupted with speed on par with primordial realm experts despite being a mid-god king, shattering through space and crossing thousands of kilometers each moment. Jin Hong is actually coming. Jian Chen frowned. As a Grand Exalt's successor, who knew how many ancient secret techniques he had inherited, it was nothing strange for him to possess this kind of speed. However, that would mean his plan to capture the scion of 5 Point and unleash his primordial realm strength to kill Chu Jia and the others had fallen through. Looks like all I can do is last a little longer. Jian Chen was helpless inside. Jin Hong's arrival forced him to continue with his act. Blood sprayed everywhere from his mouth as his strength deflated like a balloon. His face became sheet white, extremely heavily injured as if he was on the brink of death. Ha ha ha, he can't last much longer. He's going to die soon. As Chu Jia launched vicious attacks at Jian Chen, he laughed with cruelty. Looking at how pitifully weak Yang Yutian had become and comparing it to his arrogance in the Two World Mountains, he felt great satisfaction. He seemed to finally vent the sense of humiliation and frustration he had repressed for so long. Nearby, the scion of 5 Point watched on indifferently. He had no intentions of interfering. In his eyes, Yang Yutian's fate had nothing to do with him. Even if Yang Yutian had mentioned his master, the Point Cloud Venerable, he still had no intentions of assisting him. The reason why he had remained here was because he wanted to personally witness just how long the expert who had defeated him in a single strike could last in an encirclement of 5 primordial realm experts. Or in other words, he wanted to see how Yang Yutian would die. Sigh, a prodigy is about to die young. Master is right. The vast saints world has never lacked monstrously talented prodigies, but 99% of these people will die young on their path of growth. Less than 1 in 100 can truly become great experts. The scion of 5 Point had already changed into a new set of white robes. He crossed his arms as he hovered in the air, sighing to himself. In the battlefield, powerful pulses of energy constantly tore through the surroundings and booms rang out endlessly. The 5 of them continued to launch wild attacks at Jian Chen, and their rhythm sped up. That was because the 5 of them had noticed something strange. Yang Yutian was already heavily injured from their attacks. He was covered in blood, and his life force extremely weak, as if he was on his last breath. However, he just did not die. Whenever they thought Yang Yutian was about to give in, only requiring a single strike to easily kill him, the outcome when their attacks landed on him would be coughing up a few mouthfuls of blood and becoming even more heavily injured in his near-death state. However, he just did not die. If it were just once, then so be it. However, this continued for several times in a row, which almost drove the 5 of them crazy. In that instant, they even began to wonder how many lives Yang Yutian possessed. How was he still alive after taking on so many fatal attacks? He was simply unkillable. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2799, The Grand Exalt's Legacy. God damn it, just how hard is he to kill? Why is he still alive? Chu Jia finally could not help but curse aloud. With how heavily injured Yang Yutian was, just a single glance of him was enough to send a chill down his spine. If regular cultivators had suffered wounds as severe as his, who knew how many times over they would have died already. Yet, Yang Yutian just hung on. Damn it. He's already so injured. I refuse to believe we can't kill him today. Attack his soul. Zhou Ji grinded his teeth. His eyes had become slightly bloodshot. He seemed to be going crazy. Yang Yutian's flesh is very, very tough, and the head is the toughest part of the body. I've struck him 3 times in the head with the strength of the primordial realm, yet I haven't even put a dent in it. Even if we can't destroy his head, we have to shake apart his soul. Everyone, let's use our full strength and target his head with secret techniques. Immediately, the 5 of them ground their teeth as they began to use powerful secret techniques. These secret techniques were powerful attacks the ancestors of their organizations had personally emerged from seclusion and specially created for the formation they used. It could make their attacks even greater. In the Dark Star world, they had used this secret technique a total of 2 times. The first time was when they took back the 100 Saint City, when they encircled the Vice Hall Master Duff, forcefully elevating their battle prowess at the first heavenly layer to repel the second heavenly layer Duff. The second time was when the 7th Hall Master, Getty, personally arrived at the 100 Saint City. They had used this secret technique to endure Getty's attack. Even though it was almost useless before Getty, the secret technique's power made it their greatest trump card, something that they took pride in. However, it would place an extremely great burden on both them and the sacrificial god kings in the formation when the secret technique was used, so they could not afford to use it unless it truly mattered. Immediately, a terrifying pressure that rivaled peak first heavenly layer infinite primes radiated out. A blurry figure appeared in their formations, radiating with chilling, terrifying pressure. These figures were the ancestors of their organizations. They had used the secret technique to conjure a figure of their grand prime ancestors. Even though the energy was limited to the first heavenly layer of infinite prime, it did contain an indescribable power of ways. Of course, not everyone's secret techniques were the same. An illusionary sword would appear out of nowhere in one of their formations, radiating with blinding light. The sword was their clan treasure, a high-quality god artifact, wielded by their strongest ancestor. There was also a formation that condensed a pitch-black finger out of pure energy, radiating with chilling, black light. In short, the figures they condensed with their secret techniques all varied, but it all reached the peak of the first heavenly layer, or even approaching the second heavenly layer. In the next moment, the 5 secret techniques hurtled towards Jian Chen with enough power to make any god king pale. This time, they all targeted Jian Chen's head. Boom! Within the rumble, Jian Chen was launched far away. The powerful shockwaves wreaked havoc in the surroundings as the ground below was reduced to a mess, covered in great fissures. The 5 of them were slightly out of breath as they stared right at Jian Chen's head. They wanted to see whether their strongest attack had managed to shatter Jian Chen's head or not. However, their hearts sunk slightly very soon, as they discovered that Jian Chen's head was still intact apart from being covered in blood. It had not shattered like they had been hoping. Even if his head hasn't shattered from such a powerful attack, his soul must have been shaken to pieces, said Gong Ruiz as he stared straight at Jian Chen, who had been launched away. This time, Jian Chen flew several dozen kilometers away before falling to the ground, laying there without moving. However, this only lasted for less than 10 seconds under their nervous and uneasy gazes. Jian Chen climbed up, with difficulty, from the ground. His face was covered in blood, which was quite a vicious and horrifying sight. They could no longer make out his face. He's still not dead. How is he still alive? Chu Jie, Zhou Ji, Gong Ruiz, Kong Feiying, and Zhao Wenbin all behaved like they had seen a ghost. Their eyes were wide open as their faces were filled with disbelief. Nearby, the scion of 5 Point who had been spectating the entire time blinked his eyes as hard as he could. He too was filled with disbelief. Ha ha ha, I obtained a primordial realm expert's legacy. I possess many methods to protect myself, or I would have never been able to emerge from the 2 world mountains. Your strength right now is still not enough to kill me. Covered in blood, Jian Chen laughed aloud. His presence was extremely feeble as his flames of life wavered, as if they could go out at any time. But at this moment, an extremely powerful and pure vital energy suddenly blossomed in his body. Even though just a tiny sliver of it leaked out of his body, it immediately affected the world around him. The wind began to blow, and the sky within several 100,000 kilometers turned blood-red in a single instant. It was as if this vital energy possessed an absolute power that could change the world. Even just a sliver of it could shake up the world and alter time and space. As a matter of fact, the vital energy could interfere with the ways of the world to a certain degree. It was as if the vital energy itself was a manifestation of ways. Chu Jie and the others' faces changed rapidly. They could sense a paramount pressure from the vital energy, along with an extremely ancient and weathered sensation. This feeling was like a great power hiding unfathomable mysteries, which led to an extremely severe influence over their souls. As they felt shock, the urge to drop to their knees and yield bloomed inside them. What is that? What kind of legacy is that? Why do I feel like yielding before this vital energy? It's even more intense than when I face our ancestor. This presence seems to be rather similar to Jin Hong. Immediately, the 5 of them shuddered inside. They stared at Jian Chen with their eyes wide open as their faces were plastered with extreme shock, disbelief, doubt, and joy. These emotions flashed across their faces rapidly, which was quite an interesting sight. This was because they all thought of the same thing at that moment. It was exactly this thought that made their hearts surge. They had always known Yang Yutian obtained the legacy of a primordial realm expert. Originally, they thought it was just a regular primordial realm expert, so they never cared about it. But now, the vital energy he gave off was extremely similar to the presence Jin Hong emitted when he used his Grand Exalt secret techniques in the Two World Mountains, which immediately made them connect the dots and arrive at a conclusion so terrifying that they struggled to believe it. A Grand Exalt's legacy. Don't tell me Yang Yutian has obtained a Grand Exalt's legacy. Their heart began to beat faster as blood surged through their body. It was no wonder Yang Yutian could last so long under their attacks. He had actually obtained a Grand Exalt's legacy. Now, there was no longer a need for them to say anything else. They all knew what they had to do. At that moment, the five of them completely forgot about their hatred towards Yang Yutian. Their eyes had already become filled with joy and greed. They all rushed towards Jian Chen madly. Stop! At this moment, a great voice boomed out from the distance like thunder, erupting in their ears. It was filled with anger. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2800, Counter-Attack. Jin Hong finally arrived. He had used a secret technique, pushing his speed to the limit and crossing a tremendous distance in a flash. He was currently flying towards Jian Chen. Before he arrived, the senses of his soul had already expanded over, giving him a complete grasp of the situation here. He saw the primordial realm formations that Chu Jia and the others had assembled, radiating with surging pulses of energy. He also saw the bloody Jian Chen, who had become heavily injured by their primordial realm strength. His life force was so weak that it seemed like it could go out at any time. Jian Chen's circumstances made Jin Hong furious. He was unable to remain relaxed and indifferent to everything like before anymore. He surged with fury as his eyes shone with icy killing intent. At the same time, the power of the bloodline within him reacted to the vitality that the ancient Skywolf's essence blood gave off, riling up as a result. The sense of desire it gave off was unprecedented. The intense temptation and attraction rammed against Jin Hong's will power as a bewitching force, expressing what it felt to Jin Hong. However, Jin Hong completely ignored the activity from his bloodline. With his iron will, he forcefully suppressed the effects of the bloodline on his mind. His eyes were filled with raging fury as he drew closer at extreme speeds with killing intent. Because he was still several million kilometers away from Jian Chen, it still took him some time to cross this distance even with the speed he moved at right now. Perhaps it would not take too long, but he could see that Jian Chen was already between the jaws of death, unable to last much longer. Facing such dire circumstances, just a few seconds were enough for too many irreversible matters to occur. Oh no, Jin Hong has actually come. How has he come so quickly? Chu, quick, we have to kill Yang Yutian before Jin Hong arrives, or all the arrangements we've made today will go to waste. Their faces changed and immediately became frantic, as they knew that once Jin Hong arrived, it would probably be impossible for them to kill Yang Yutian, let alone obtain the fortuitous encounter that Yang Yutian possessed. None of them dared to underestimate Jin Hong. He was the successor of a Grand Exalt after all. Just that identity alone made them extremely cautious and fearful. The five of them immediately unleashed their powerful secret techniques again, regardless of the costs and consequences. Immediately, the figures of the Grand Prime Ancestors and high-quality God artifacts appeared again, pulsing with alarming energy. How dare you! Jin Hong's voice boomed out. His rage was unstoppable. He immediately performed a series of seals before pointing out. The gesture seemed to possess paramount power. With that, the laws in the space before him immediately descended into chaos, as if it had been interfered with by something invisible. The space became extremely disorderly. Jin Hong directly rushed into the disorderly space. He vanished instantly. By the time he reappeared, he was already several million kilometers away, appearing like he had teleported. He had crossed the distance in a single instant, such that he was only 1,000 kilometers away from Jianchen now. Afterwards, his energy gushed out like a tsunami, and a tremendous pressure filled the surroundings. The illusionary figure of the ancient Skywolf had appeared behind him silently. Afterwards, all of his energy surged, and he let out a howl at the sky. Immediately, a howl seemed to fill the entire Dark Star world. With that, the very ground shook as the yin and yang of the world inverted. Everyone seemed to yield in subservience, and the world trembled. Just when the 5 of them were prepared to launch their condensed secret techniques, the wolf howl arrived. The howl pierced everything, bypassing all defenses and directly penetrating the protective energy of their primordial realm formations. It reached their minds like a clap of thunder. The howl possessed an indescribably terrifying power to stun. It moved through their ears and directly interfered with their souls, making their very consciousness halt for an instant. They were thrown into a daze, frozen in the same postures as before. This was an extremely strange sight, as if Jin Hong's howl had made space freeze and time halt. It made the brains of the 5 of them and the several thousand sacrificial god kings short-circuit, throwing them into a complete daze. In the next moment, a string of explosions erupted in the formations. The formations that linked their powers suddenly collapsed. In a mere 5 seconds, the primordial realm formations that the 5 of them depended on the most collapsed just like that. Even the powerful secret techniques they had condensed seemed to lose control with the destruction of the formations, dispersing in the surroundings as tremendous energy. This sight stunned the scion of 5 Point, who was watching on from a distance. He was overcome by shock. He knew extremely well how powerful the primordial realm formations were, yet a formation as powerful as that had actually collapsed from a single howl from Jin Hong. They seemed so feeble. This is, a grand exalt secret technique, the scion of 5 Point gulped. In that moment, his fear towards Jin Hong ran so deep that it reached his bones. Then he looked at Jianchen. Although he had not been able to roughly identify the origins of the vital energy that Jianchen gave off like Chu Tian and the others, as he did not have any contact with Jin Hong, he could still tell it was something extremely impressive from the startling might the vital energy gave off. As a result, he too was tempted to a certain degree. However, after weighing the consequences, he chose not to act recklessly in the end. This was because neither his identity or the power of the sect behind him could support any reckless actions he took in the 100 Saint City. At this moment, the 5 of them all returned to their senses. They gazed at the collapsed primordial realm formations and at Jin Hong, who was 1,000 kilometers away. Their faces paled. As they felt shocked over how easily Jin Hong had destroyed their formations, they also found this extremely difficult to accept. They were not afraid of Jin Hong, as even when they knew they could not defeat Jin Hong would never actually kill them. They represented the clans behind them. Even though their status was nowhere close to Jin Hong's in the Wolf clan, they still carried some of their clan's pride and dignity. What they refused to accept was how they could only watch helplessly as they brushed past the possible Grand Exalt's legacy on Yang Yutian. They could only watch helplessly as a tremendous fortune that could potentially change their lives brushed past them. The tremendous feeling of disappointment made them develop intense regret and resentment. This resentment was obviously directed towards Jin Hong. Ha 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 ha, how are you going to kill me now without the primordial realm formations? Looks like the one who'll die today is not me, but you. At this moment, Jianchen let out a roar of laughter with his bloody mouth. The vital energy that the essence blood from the ancient Skywolf had been condensed with all the power within him into 5-meter-long arrows of vitality before shooting towards the 5 of them like red bolts of lightning. Of course, the arrows of vitality were just a cover, as Jian Chen was still unable to control the power of the essence blood as he wished, much less use the power to injure anyone. The true killing intent in this move was a feeble strand of sword chi hidden within the vital energy. The sword chi was feeble, but the power it contained would be described as earth-shattering in the Dark Star world. That was because this was a terrifying strand of sword chi that could kill primordial realm experts. At this moment, Jian Chen had finally found a suitable opportunity. He used the vital energy as a cover to launch a counterattack. This counterattack would result in certain death. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2801, The Essence Blood Exposed. In that instant, the surging red light from the 5 arrows of vital energy enveloped the 5 of them. The expressions of Chu Jie, Zhou Ji, Kong Feiying, Zhao Wenbin, and Gong Rui's changed drastically. They had already witnessed the horrors of the vital energy before. That was a terrifying power that could make the entire world pale. They had already been frightened to their wits' end. And more importantly, they had already guessed that the vital energy was probably connected to a Grand Exalt's legacy, or maybe it was the power that Grand Exalts possessed. Before such high-level power, even if they had the primordial realm formations, they were helpless, let alone the fact that the primordial realm formations were already in shambles. Their strength had reverted to its previous state, making them even more helpless before a power they believed to have reached the level of Grand Exalts already. This was all because they were insufficiently powerful. Otherwise, if a primordial realm expert was present, they would probably be able to see through the disguise of the 5 arrows of vital energy under Jian Chen's control. Yang Yutian, I am a core disciple of the Yuqiong sect. I possess esteemed status within the Yuqiong sect. If you kill me, the Yuqiong sect will never spare you. As the terrifying vital energy enveloped him, the life-threatening danger finally made Zhou Ji's spirit collapse. He barked out fearfully, clearly trying to bargain for his life. Yang Yutian, I'll clean the slate with you right now, right now. I definitely won't cause you any more problems in the future. I just hope you can stop immediately. Under the threat of death, Gong Rui's temporarily tossed his pride aside too, begging for mercy despite the humiliation and reluctance he felt. That was what he said, but resentment and intense killing intent was still hidden within the depths of his eyes. Kong Feiying of the Tsangqiong clan and Zhao Wenbin of the Zhou family communicated with him secretly too. They had all paled from fright, as they could sense the presence of death that made their very souls tremble from the powerful vital energy. Even with the sacrificial god kings they had brought with them, even with the protection of the supreme quality saint artifacts on them, they did even feel a hint of safety before this presence of death. However, Jian Chen ignored their pleas. His gaze was cold and his killing intent was resolute. Controlling the tiny strands of sword chi masked by the vital energy, he plunged it mercilessly into their heads. Silently, the tiny strands of sword chi vanished into their foreheads. This was a terrifying power that could even kill primordial realm experts. Before this power, the 5 of them were obviously unable to put up any resistance at all as mere god kings. In that instant, Chu Jie, Kong Feiying, Zhou Ji, Gong Rui's, and Zhao Wenbin's souls shattered. They died on the spot. Afterwards, the vital energy immediately entered their heads through the wound on their foreheads, leaving behind a slight trace to make it seem like they had died to the vital energy. The vital energy that filled the surroundings gradually dispersed. When the surroundings cleared up once more, Chu Jie, Zhou Ji, Kong Feiying, Gong Rui's, and Zhao Wenbin had already been reduced to corpses, laying as still as a log on the ground. The sacrificial god kings they had brought with them became stunned with absolutely no idea about what to do. As for Jian Chen, he seemed like all his energy had been drained away. Not only was his presence feeble, but his life force flickered, as if it had already run out. Afterwards, he shut his eyes and collapsed on the ground, falling unconscious. As he fainted, the droplet of essence blood from the ancient sky wolf within his body seemed to break free from some kind of restraint. The pure vital energy erupted from the constraints of Jian Chen's body, directly leaking out and revolving around him. At the same time, the droplet of essence blood seemed to develop a mind of its own, moving slowly through Jian Chen's body before arriving in his mouth at the very end. It was as if it wanted to break free from Jian Chen's control and fly out. However, Jian Chen clenched his teeth, using his mouth as a prison to block its only way out. The essence blood was trapped in there. Right now, Jian Chen had completely lowered his guard. Stealing this droplet of Grand Exalt's essence blood would not require much cultivation at all. One only had to pry open Jian Chen's mouth gently, and the essence blood would be theirs. Nearby, the scion of 5 Point stared at the unconscious Jian Chen. He could sense the item radiating with pure vital energy from Jian Chen's mouth as he hesitated. Even though he had failed to recognize this to be the essence blood of a Grand Exalt, he knew it was something impressive. Making up his mind, he appeared beside Jian Chen instantly. "Piss off. I don't care who you are, but if you take Yang Yutian's possessions, I'll hunt you down to the ends of the earth. I won't even spare your sect." Just as the scion of 5 Point was about to retrieve the essence blood from Jian Chen's mouth, Jin Hong's furious voice rolled over. He had turned into a streak of light, crossing the last 1,000 kilometers extremely quickly. His aura surged, vaguely resembling a valiant, running, silver wolf. He directly headbutted towards the scion of 5 Point like he was unstoppable. And, when they collided, the space rippled under the great power, like a pebble had been tossed into a calm lake. The space there was under the interference of Jin Hong's power. Even though it was not a particularly great interference, it would be difficult to use the laws of space unless their comprehension had surpassed Jin Hong's cultivation. The scion of 5 Point's expression changed. He immediately became sterner than he had ever been before. He was confident in himself, but he also knew about Jin Hong's renowned title as the successor of a Grand Exalt. Even within the vast saints' world, successors of Grand Exalts were extremely resplendent figures. Although he was still not particularly powerful, no one could afford to brush him aside. Faced with someone like him, the scion of 5 Point obviously refused to be careless. Even though he was unable to control space as he wished under Jin Hong's interference, the power of the laws was still unaffected. With the laws of space in one hand and the laws of time in the other, he merged them between his hands, which was much more complicated than simple addition. He launched a strike at Jin Hong with his full strength. Boom! Within the great rumble, the scion of 5 Point was struck viciously by the silver wolf that Jin Hong had become. Not only had his attack failed to harm the silver wolf, but he was even knocked far away instead, spurting with blood. His ribs had completely shattered, and his entire chest caved in. The terrifying force shook his organs to pieces. The scion of 5 Point coughed up many mouthfuls of blood. He stared at Jin Hong deeply and fearfully before fleeing for his life without even looking back. He left the range where space was under Jin Hong's interference, and he immediately pulsed with the powers of space. He vanished in a single instant. Jin Hong did not chase after him. He had not even looked at the scion of 5 Point properly the entire time. His eyes had remained fixed on the unconscious Jian Chen on the ground the entire time. His eyes were filled with undisguisable shock and disbelief. He was the successor of the ancient Skywolf, the one closest to the ancient Skywolf in the current age. It was even possible to say he was the most intimate with the ancient Skywolf. As a result, he recognized the origins of the pulses of vitality from Jian Chen in a single glance. This left him shocked, extremely shocked. His heart surged violently without any signs of settling down. In that moment, he even began to wonder whether there was anything wrong with his senses. He doubted whether his eyes were working. He even wondered whether he was dreaming. That was because he actually sensed the existence of a droplet of the ancient skywolf's essence blood from Yang Yutian. This was essence blood, not regular blood. It was far, far more precious than regular blood. The two could not even be compared to each other. He had sensed that Yang Yutian possessed something that his bloodline desired several times now. Jin Hong had come up with numerous possibilities for the reason behind this, reaching many different conclusions. However, never did he imagine that the item that riled up his bloodline on Yang Yutian was actually a droplet of the ancient skywolf's essence blood. The shock that the essence blood had caused Jin Hong even made it impossible for him to avert his attention towards the 5 prodigies who had already died. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2802, Clearing Away the Mysteries. Even Jin Hong struggled to maintain his composure as he faced the droplet of Grand Exalt's essence blood before him. His heart heated up as blood flowed through his body faster than ever. The power of his bloodline smoldered, as if it was about to burn. This was because the droplet of Grand Exalt's essence blood in Jian Chen's possession shared the same origins as his bloodline. They had come from the same person. The powers that could be unleashed from the essence blood would obviously become highly limited in the hands of others, but it would be a completely different story when it came to Jin Hong. Not only could he absorb it completely and use all the energy within the essence blood, but he could even use the essence blood to strengthen his bloodline, or even make his bloodline evolve to a higher level. Jin Hong stared at the unconscious Jian Chen with mixed feelings. He obviously understood it would be a piece of cake if he wanted to take the essence blood from Jian Chen right now, but he did not do that. Despite what he was feeling, his eyes remained clear the entire time. He had not become blinded by desire. He pointed at Jian Chen's throat and pure energy surged out, arriving in Jian Chen's mouth and leading the Grand Exalt's essence blood that had wanted to flee the entire time back into Jian Chen's body. Afterwards, he took out a jade bottle from his space ring. The moment he removed the lid, a dense aura of life immediately radiated out. The aura of life was tremendous and extremely pure. Moreover, it had completely exceeded the truth tier, well and truly reaching the God tier. Just the aura of life it gave off turned the wasteland within 1,000 meters into a lush path of greenery. It was clearly impossible for this item to have been brought in from outside. It was something rare from the Dark Star world. Jin Hong dribbled some of the green fluid that was rich with the aura of life onto Jian Chen. The moment the green fluid came in contact with Jian Chen's skin, it silently dissolved, having been absorbed already. In the next moment, Jian Chen's frighteningly horrific wounds began to heal at a visible rate. Even the pieces of missing flesh began to regrow. The green fluid filled with the tremendous aura of life clearly had unbelievably wondrous effects when it came to healing wounds. In less than a minute, Jian Chen had made a complete recovery. Of course, only his flesh wounds had been healed. His heavily damaged soul was clearly unable to be completely healed. As a result, even though all wounds vanished from his body, Jian Chen was still pale white. It was also at this moment that Jian Chen opened his eyes. He remained in a feeble state, his face haggard and his eyes dim. He gazed at the crouching Jin Hong beside him and opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he was stopped by Jin Hong. Jin Hong said sternly, "Don't talk for now. I'll bring you back to the 100 Saints City immediately. We'll talk once we get back." With that, Jin Hong was about to return to the 100 Saints City with Jian Chen. "There's no need to return to the 100 Saints City. My wounds are mostly fine now. I just need a safe place to rest up, and I'll be fine." Jian Chen struggled to his feet. He glanced past the several thousand god kings Chu Jia and the others had brought with them, but he had no intentions of killing them all. Afterwards, he took to the air in a wobbly manner, flying into the distance. At the same time, he said, "Jin Hong, I know you have questions. Let's find a place where I can explain it all to you slowly. On the outskirts of the Two World Mountains, on a mountain peak shrouded by dense mist, Jian Chen sat with his legs crossed and his robes soaked with blood. He was enveloped with a dense layer of vital energy, such that he basked in the blood-red light. It seemed like a huge, blood-red cocoon. Jin Hong sat beside him. As he gazed at the red light around Jian Chen, his eyes became filled with mixed feelings, along with deep suspicion and intense curiosity. He was obviously curious about the origins of the droplet of the ancient skywolf's essence blood. As for Jian Chen's wounds, Jin Hong had instead stopped worrying. First, with the spring water of life, and now, with the power from the Grand Exalt's blood, he believed Jian Chen could make a complete recovery very soon under the healing of these two powers. However, unbeknownst to Jin Hong, the power of the essence blood was not as wondrously effective to Jian Chen as he imagined it to be. Jian Chen purposefully radiated with the power of the essence blood as a disguise, to make everything he went through seem reasonable. Moreover, there was something else that Jin Hong had failed to notice. An invisible power enveloped a radius of 100,000 kilometers around this place and cut off all presences, such that even if presences leaked out, it would not reach the capital city of the Dark Star race. This was Jian Chen's ultimate will. Actually, he had already enveloped this region with his ultimate will when he began using the power of the essence blood. All of his wounds, the unnatural activity of the essence blood in his body, and even the fainting had been an act that Jian Chen had purposely put on. He did this to give off a false impression of being feeble. He had appeared so feeble in front of Jin Hong, even clearly exposing the existence of the Grand Exalt's essence blood to him, in order to see how Jin Hong would react. He wanted to see if Jin Hong would try and take it for himself. In the end, Jin Hong's response did not disappoint Jian Chen at all, and Jian Chen began to recognize Jin Hong from the bottom of his heart. You must be very curious where the droplet of essence blood in my body comes from, right? At this moment, Jian Chen's voice rang out as he healed. He was enveloped by the red cocoon, so it was impossible to make out his figure. Hearing that, Jin Hong could not help but turn his head and gaze at Jian Chen in the vital energy. After a moment of thought, he said, "Are you saying you know the origins of the droplet of blood in your body?" "I do. Not only do I know its origins, but I even know where you obtained your Grand Exalt's legacy. As a late friend and I accidentally opened the place containing the ancient Skywolf's legacy," Jian Chen said calmly. "What?" Jin Hong was stunned. He sprang onto his feet. In that moment, the shock that Jian Chen had brought him was even more intense than when Jin Hong discovered the ancient Skywolf's essence blood on him. His dire wolf clan had always treated the discovery of the ancient Skywolf's legacy as the clan's greatest honor. They believed they had been blessed by heavens, and it was destined by fate. However, never did he imagine that this was actually all connected to Yang Yutian. The reason why he had obtained the Grand Exalt's legacy in the first place was all because of Yang Yutian seated right beside him. Yang Yutian had instead become his greatest benefactor. For a moment, Jin Hong had no idea how to respond. His emotions were extremely mixed. If it really was like what Yang Yutian said, did that not mean he owed a huge favor to Yang Yutian? And, this favor would be so great that he would probably never be able to return it, even throughout his entire life. After all, if Yang Yutian had not opened the location of the legacy, he would have never received the legacy. Without the legacy, he, Jin Hong, would probably still be someone insignificant in his clan. He would have never been able to enjoy his current glory. Without any exaggeration, Yang Yutian had basically given him a new lease on life. Jin Hong took a few deep breaths before taking a few steps back slowly and bowing deeply towards Jian Chen. His face was filled with sincere gratitude. "Brother Jin Hong, there's no need for you to be like this. Chosen as the successor by the ancient Skywolf, this is a fortuitous encounter that belongs to you. I'm just curious why you never tried taking the droplet of essence blood from me. I've already become heavily injured." With your strength, taking the droplet of essence blood from me would be a piece of cake. Aren't you interested in the essence blood at all? That's a droplet of a grand exalt's essence blood after all, and it shares the same origins as your legacy. It can have an unimaginable effect on you, Jian Chen continued. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2803, The Pill Formula Obtained. Jin Hong took in a deep breath and said, Brother Yang Yutian, that's correct. I am extremely drawn to the droplet of Grand Exalt's essence blood on you, and because it shares its origins with my legacy, it can probably benefit me even beyond my wildest imaginations. It might even be able to change my fate once again. However, you just don't understand me. You don't understand what kind of person I am, because I, Jin Hong, am not one to develop ill intentions upon seeing the wealth of others, and I am even less of a bandit who only knows how to rob by force. Stealing someone else's fortune has never been a part of my principles. Everyone has their fortunes and luck. Being able to obtain the droplet of essence blood, that is your fortune and luck. Under the same logic, the legacy left behind by Senior Ancient Skywolf had chosen me instead of my many clansmen is my fortune and luck. If everyone develops ill intentions upon seeing the wealth of others like what you believe, if everyone robs by force when they see something good regardless of the consequences, this Grand Exalt's legacy of mine probably would not be in my hands anymore. It would have been taken by the experts in the clan a long time ago. Jin Hong said that eloquently and generously, completely originating from the bottom of his heart. And, as he said that, he radiated with righteousness. Jian Chen glanced at Jin Hong deeply. He could obviously sense Jin Hong's righteousness. Throughout the vast saints' world, he really had not seen a lot of people who could be so generous like Jin Hong. As long as the benefits were large enough, as long as the temptations were great enough, even peak experts who had reached Grand Prime would try and take by force without any sense of shame. In the past, when he fled through the saints' world with the Inata Tower, there had been many examples of this. There was also when Shao Man became the master of the Neptunian Divine Palace. A group of Grand Primes had been drawn over in an attempt to take it by force. Jin Hong, let me ask you a question. Do you really not want the droplet of essence blood on me? Jian Chen asked calmly. I do want it. How can't I want it? If this droplet of essence blood belonged to nobody, I'd definitely contend for it, with the essence blood ending up with the strongest. However, the essence blood already belongs to you. And, I had only obtained the Grand Exalt's legacy thanks to you opening the place of the legacy. As a result, I will never desire the droplet of essence blood on you, not even a bit. Otherwise, I'll be betraying myself, Jin Hong said. I hadn't misjudged you. The light around Jian Chen gradually subsided, revealing his body. But at this moment, he had already made a complete recovery. Apart from being slightly mentally exhausted, he seemed to be in perfect health. Afterwards, the essence blood of the ancient Skywolf drifted out of Jian Chen's body slowly. Dense, vital energy immediately seeped out, turning the surroundings completely red. Jin Hong, you have a much greater use for this droplet of essence blood. If you leave it with me, it'll just gather dust, so I'll give you the essence blood now so that it can return to the person it belongs with. Jian Chen drifted the essence blood towards Jin Hong slowly. It was not a large droplet, but the terrifying vital energy and power hidden within could be regarded as earth-shaking. That was because it was on just too high of a level which people could only lift their heads and stare at. Jin Hong immediately rejected him. Brother Yang Yutian, you mustn't do that. If you don't have this droplet of essence blood, your strength will definitely be heavily affected. Jin Hong had already come to believe that Jian Chen's cultivation-defying battle prowess, his tenacious life force that made him seemingly unkillable, and his terrifying recovery rate all originated from this droplet of essence blood. Brother Jin Hong, this droplet of essence blood isn't as useful to me as you think. However, it might even be able to change your fate in your hands. And, I'm not giving this to you for free. I want to exchange it for something. Jian Chen was unfazed, as if the droplet of essence blood did not mean much to him at all. He remained as composed as ever. Jin Hong took in a deep breath and asked, "What do you want to exchange it for?" "I want the formula for refining 100 Tribulations God King pills." The formula of the 100 Tribulations God King's pill was obtained by the seniors of my clan after paying quite the price, but it's nowhere close to the value of a droplet of Grand Exalt's essence blood, Jin Hong said. "Are you going to exchange with me or not? If you're not, I can always exchange it with the Heavenly Crane clan. I'm certain they'll be extremely willing to make this deal." Jian Chen looked at Jin Hong with a slight smile. "I'll do the exchange." Jin Hong gritted his teeth before bowing deeply towards Jian Chen again. He was overwhelmed with gratitude. "Brother Yang Yutian, I can never return this favor with how great it is. If you ever need me, I'll definitely do everything I can to assist you." Afterwards, Jin Hong did not try to turn it down anymore. He directly accepted the essence blood, but he did not refine it in a hurry. Instead, he contacted the 100 Saints city in a hurry to send people to the ruins of the spirit's world for the pill formula. There was a grand prime of the Dire Wolf clan waiting at the entrance of the Dark Star world. Jin Hong's request was directly delivered to his hands. Jin Hong actually requires the formula for the 100 Tribulations God King pill. That's strange. What does he need it for? The people of the Dark Star race trapped in the world of the fallen beast don't seem to require the pill formula, right? The ancestor of the Dire Wolf clan who received the message was filled with doubt. In the past, our clan had an agreement with the person who created the pill formula, such that it is restricted to our clan, and we're forbidden from passing it on to someone else. Not only is our Dire Wolf clan bound to this agreement, but all the other peak organizations who obtained the pill formula from him are bound to it too. As a result, if Jin Hong uses the formula for himself, that's not exactly breaching the agreement, but if he gives it to someone else, then our clan will have broken the agreement, and will have to cough up quite a large sum of resources. Whatever. Jin Hong is our clan's treasured genius. We're depending on him to lead us into a period of glory in the future. The clan should do its best to fulfill any request from him. In the Dark Star world, on the same mountain in the outskirts of the two world mountains, Jian Chen and Jin Hong waited there for 2 days before a sacrificial god king from the Dire Wolf clan finally delivered the pill formula. Jin Hong handed the pill formula to Jian Chen sternly and said, "Yang Yutian, the ancestor has warned me. This pill formula is restricted to a single clan or organization. If it is passed to someone else outside the clan or organization, there'll be quite the price to pay. That's because even our clan had to pay some costs in order to obtain the pill formula. Before we obtained it, we established an agreement. If we break this agreement and pass it on to someone who doesn't belong to our clan, we'll have to pay quite a large price as a penalty. Of course, we'll shoulder the penalties that result from the pill formula in our possession, but once you've obtained it, you should limit the formula to within your organization if you have one. You must not pass it to another organization, as probably no ordinary person can bear the consequences. Looks like the pill formula has got quite the origin, seeing how even a peak clan like your Dire Wolf clan has to be so cautious." Jian Chen held the pill formula and could not help but become excited. With the pill formula, it would only be a matter of time for him to convert all the high-grade God King grass, over 30,000 stalks of them, into God King pills. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2804, The Dark Star Emperor. Jian Chen glanced through the pill formula roughly. A detailed method and list of steps to refine the 100 Tribulations God King pill was clearly recorded on there. Even all the materials it required were listed. God King grass was just a crucial material for refining the pill. In reality, there were several dozen supplementary materials that went into refining 100 Tribulations God King pills. However, none of these supplementary materials were particularly rare. He could purchase them on a large scale in the Saints' world. Once I get back to the Tian Yuan clan, I need to get to work and refine some pills. Right now, the Tian Yuan clan has Senior Su Ran, a chaotic prime, watching over it, as well as a few infinite primes recruited from elsewhere. However, the clan basically supports these primordial realm experts as deposits of strength to the clan. Rarely do we use them. Only the central force of God Kings are frequently used. Right now, basically 90% of the God Kings in the clan were recruited. There's a pitiful number of God Kings that actually originate from the clan. Once these high-grade God Kings pills are refined, they'll be perfect for making up the central force of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen calculated to himself. He had obtained the pill formula for refining God King pills, and he possessed the materials too. Everything was ready now, and he only lacked one crucial element. At that moment, he even became tempted to rush back to the Tian Yuan clan immediately and refine pills. Brother Yang Yutian, after I return to the 100 Saints City, I plan on leaving the Dark Star world to absorb the droplet of Grand Exalt's essence blood. I need to do it under the Ancestors' watch. If nothing goes wrong, my strength should skyrocket once I absorb the blood completely. There's even a chance for me to directly reach the Primaridla realm, Jin Hong said as he struggled to hide his excitement. He was still extremely young right now, nowhere close to 1,000 years old. If he really could reach the primordial realm within a millennium, it would definitely become a legendary story recorded in the annals of history. The vast Saints' world possessed countless geniuses, even plenty that possessed almost unprecedented talent. However, over these countless years, there had only been a handful that had reached the primordial realm within a millennium. Then allow me to congratulate you first, Brother Jin Hong. Let's hope Brother Jin Hong can reach the primordial realm soon. Jian Chen clasped his hands, but as soon as he said that, his heart suddenly shuddered. In that moment, he detected with his superior senses an extremely powerful presence come and go in a flash in an extremely distant place. It moved extremely quickly, barging straight into the two-world mountains like the Lord of the Mountains had come home, without hiding anything at all. It vanished into the depths of the two-world mountains instantly. The Dark Star Emperor. Jian Chen shivered inside. The presence was so powerful that it had basically already exceeded the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime. It basically came from a chaotic prime. There was only a single person with such unparalleled prowess throughout the entire Dark Star world. Jian Chen immediately became stern. The Dark Star Emperor had actually emerged from secluded cultivation, and he had even entered the depths of the two-world mountains in person. This alarmed him. Brother Jin Hong, I've already wasted enough time here. I need to set off to hunt life-devouring beasts, so we'll bid farewell to one another here. Oh right, once you return to the 100 Saints City, could you pass a message on to He Qianshan for me? The Dark Star world won't be very peaceful in the near future, with something big about to happen. It would be best if she left here. With that, Jian Chen turned around and left, vanishing into the mist very soon. Jin Hong opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but Jian Chen had already vanished. Jian Chen's words towards the end filled him with doubt. He was rather puzzled. The Dark Star world would not be very peaceful in the near future. Something big was going to happen. If something big really was going to happen, they should have received news of it first in the 100 Saints City. How could Yang Yutian, an independent cultivator without any organizations that provided him with information in the Dark Star world, learn about information that even they were clueless about before them? However, seeing how serious Yang Yutian was, he did not seem like he was joking, which left Jin Hong at a temporary loss about what to do. Did Yang Yutian really know some hidden secrets? Looks like this Yang Yutian really isn't as simple as he seems on the surface, Jin Hong murmured. At that moment, his impression of Jian Chen had only become rather mysterious. Within the Two World Mountains, Jian Chen hid his presence and flew through the mountains and forests silently like a ghost. He had already expanded the senses of his soul. Under his precise control, it expanded into the surroundings carefully in an extremely well-hidden way. He knew without even thinking that the Dark Star Emperor had entered the Two World Mountains for two matters. The first was for the droplet of essence blood lost in there by the Lord of Dark Night City, while the other was obviously for him, who was disguised as Kun Tian. There might have even been a small possibility that he had come for Sun Ran. When Sun Ran died, he created a very large disturbance in the depths of the Two World Mountains. He basically alarmed all the primordial realm life-devouring beasts in there. The startling news must have reached the capital city a long time ago. Moreover, my entry into the depths of the Two World Mountains under Kun Tian's guise was no secret either, so they must have guessed I'm in danger. I just wonder whether Sun Ran's tracks have been divulged or not. If the capital city knew about Sun Ran's tracks, that would be two Hall Masters of the Dark Star race facing danger at the same time. This is something that can shake up the entire Dark Star race, so it'll definitely have alarmed the Dark Star Emperor. The Dark Star race cannot afford to lose two Hall Masters, Jian Chen thought. He knew he was forced to end his visit to the 100 Saint City now with the Dark Star Emperor's appearance. He had to reassume his identity of Kun Tian and return to the Fifth Divine Hall. Very soon, Jian Chen reached the depths of the Two World Mountains. Along the way, he constantly sensed for the imprints he had left behind. He needed to return to the lake where he hid Kun Tian's god artifacts before the Dark Star Emperor and retrieve his items. By now, the depths of the Two World Mountains had already become filled with thunderous beast roars. With how invincible he was, the Dark Star Emperor allowed his presence to erupt, charging straight into the depths without any intentions of concealing it. As a result, he alarmed all the life-devouring beasts in there immediately. All the primordial realm life-devouring beasts in the Two World Mountains had already begun to move, converging towards the Dark Star Emperor from all directions. The Dark Star Emperor was simply too powerful. Even with his strength suppressed here, he was still completely fearless. Even all the life-devouring beasts in the Two World Mountains were unable to strike fear into him. The presence he gave off turned him into a dazzling beacon of light. Who knew whether it was a declaration of his arrival to the life-devouring beasts in the Two World Mountains, or to serve as a guide for the two endangered Hall Masters. He flew around in there aimlessly. He would constantly fly before halting, sensing the surroundings carefully as he hovered in the air. Jian Chen concealed all of his presence carefully. He sensed the Dark Star Emperor's position from afar and thought sternly, he truly is an existence on par with chaotic primes. Even in the depths of the Two World Mountains, he still possesses battle prowess at the 9th heavenly layer of Infinite Prime. Perhaps the Dark Star Emperor can no longer be referred to as an Infinite Prime anymore. Apart from the limitations of his cultivation, all other aspects of him are completely on par with chaotic primes. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2805, The Invincible Emperor. At this moment, several of the closest life-devouring beasts had already approached the Dark Star Emperor. However, they stopped several dozen kilometers away, gazing in his direction. Their somewhat intelligent eyes were filled with a fearful light. They were actually afraid to approach him. The Dark Star Emperor's strength and the startling presence he radiated with actually resulted in a form of deterrence towards these primordial realm life-devouring beasts. Intense fear even appeared in the gazes of a few primordial realm life-devouring beasts. It was as if they could remember that they had once suffered quite a lot because of the Dark Star Emperor. Swish! At this moment, the Dark Star Emperor moved. Invincible, he ran amok in the depths of the two-world mountains, flying off in another direction. The direction he flew in just happened to have a hesitating primordial realm life-devouring beast that seemed to be waiting for the arrival of reinforcements. Now that it saw the Dark Star Emperor flying towards it, it immediately shuddered and dodged to one side in a hurry. However, it was still too slow. Several dozen kilometers was just a single step in the eyes of the Dark Star Emperor. He arrived beside the dodging life-devouring beast in a flash and seemed to find the life-devouring beast's existence to be blocking his path, so he waved his hand casually. As he waved his hand, shocking energy immediately surged forth, condensing into a hand of energy 300 meters across before slapping towards the life-devouring beast mercilessly. In the depths of the two-world mountains, the Dark Star Emperor's strength had been suppressed, preventing him from using all of it. But even with that being the case, his attack was still extremely startling. Bang! Faced with the hand of energy, the life-devouring beast that was only at the third layer of infinite prime could not even dodge. It was struck perfectly, producing a miserable wail as the strike launched it into the distance. As it flew away, it smashed through all the trees in its path before slamming into a mountain viciously and becoming deeply embedded in it. The hand was extremely terrifying. Not only had it heavily injured a primordial realm life-devouring beast, but the brutal energy shockwaves directly turned into a destructive storm as it ripped through the surroundings, tearing all the vegetation in a range of several dozen kilometers to shreds. The shockwave from the attack alone had purged all life within a range of several dozen kilometers, turning it into flat land. When the Dark Star Emperor injured this life-devouring beast, the other primordial realm life-devouring beasts lurking nearby did not come up to offer any assistance. Instead, they all backed down instinctively, their eyes filled with fear. However, the Dark Star Emperor did not pay any attention to them. Perhaps the Dark Star Emperor had never even taken a proper look at them, having only attacked this life-devouring beast purely because it blocked his way. Afterwards, he strode off in the air and vanished with a flash. In a few steps, he appeared several tens of thousand kilometers away before stopping again and sensing closely. This time, he seemed to sense something. His eyes immediately flashed, and he took off, flying through the forest and arriving at the lair of a primordial realm life-devouring beast in the end. The life-devouring beast that the lair belonged to fled immediately like it was facing a plague, hiding 100 kilometers away as it stared at the Dark Star Emperor vigilantly. At the same time, it glanced into the distance every now and then. Its gaze revealed some impatience. The stronger allies were almost here. The Dark Star Emperor extended his hand. In the next moment, a space ring flew into his hand as a streak of light. The space ring was what the Lord of Dark Knight City, by Jean, had lost. Looking at the space ring, a gleam of cold light immediately flashed through the Dark Star Emperor's eyes. Afterwards, there was a crack, and the space ring was reduced to dust in his hand under the tremendous pressure. Apart from the droplet of essence blood in there that remained fine, everything in the space ring had been reduced to specks of dust. Afterwards, the Dark Star Emperor extended his hand towards the life-devouring beast that owned the lair before suddenly closing it. Currently, 100 kilometers separated them. With that, the space 100 kilometers away suddenly showed signs of collapse, as if an absolute power had engulfed the region, causing the space to distort violently. The life-devouring beast there felt its body suddenly tighten. An unfathomable pressure appeared from all directions, squeezing and twisting its body. Its colossal body rapidly shrank under the terrifying pressure. As it shrank, the inky green blood within its body began to ooze out from its pores. Its skin cracked as its flesh and blood erupted out. There was even the sound of breaking bones. It opened its mouth and howled painfully as its eyes began to bulge. The pressure had almost squeezed its eyes out of their sockets. A primordial realm life-devouring beast that even Hull Masters of the Dark Star race had to handle cautiously was actually so puny before the Dark Star Emperor. Just closing his hand was enough power to forcefully crush this life-devouring beast. This was not the laws of space. It was simply a grasp and method of energy usage. The Dark Star Emperor's strength was truly terrifying. His usage and control over his powers had already reached a point that was chilling to most primordial realm experts of the Saints' world. But at this moment, an ear-piercing whistle arrived. A bone arrow pierced through the air, penetrating countless towering trees and peaks along the way as it shot towards the Dark Star Emperor with unbelievable speed. The power within the bone arrow was so great that it even seemed to be enough to rival the Dark Star Emperor. The Dark Star Emperor's eyes flashed with cold light. Suddenly, he raised his other hand and great power condensed on the tip of his finger. He pointed at the incoming bone arrow. Bang! The bone arrow turned into a blur, colliding with the Dark Star Emperor's finger with unbelievable speed. A heavy boom immediately swept out into the surroundings as a visible shockwave, reducing all the vegetation within several hundred kilometers to shreds. Even the ground became covered in cracks. The power of the bone arrow did not disperse. It lingered in the air, radiating with tremendous power and pressure, locked in stalemate against the Dark Star Emperor's finger. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2806, all mobilized along the way. The invincible strength that the Dark Star Emperor demonstrated filled the primordial realm life-devouring beasts with fear. None of the life-devouring beasts he had seen earlier actually possessed the courage to fight him. But now, a bone arrow from the depths of the vegetation was actually able to reach a stalemate with the Dark Star Emperor. It had not been repelled or injured in a single strike like the other weaker life-devouring beasts. All of this suggested that the life-devouring beast that had launched the bone arrow must possess strength extremely close to the Dark Star Emperor, or even equal strength. Mid-air, the bone arrow constantly released great power in the form of resplendent light. As a terrifying attack that could even make the Hall Masters of the Dark Star race pale, it constantly pushed against the Dark Star Emperor. The tip of the Dark Star Emperor's figure also condensed terrifying power. The energy was so pure that it was enough to phase any primordial realm expert of the Saints' world. It had almost become tangible, basically having crystallized already. It poked an inch out from the tip of his figure, clashing with the bone arrow and wearing each other down. But in the end, the bone arrow was still the one to run out of energy. Without the support of any backup energy sources, it was not the Dark Star Emperor's opponent at the end of the day. Just when it was about to run out of energy, it turned around and disappeared back into the depths of the forest. It was also at this moment that the hazy white sky enveloped by thick mist near the Dark Star Emperor suddenly darkened. A huge shadow fell rapidly from the sky with a colossal pressure, directly engulfing the Dark Star Emperor below. This was an extremely large primordial realm life-devouring beast. The pressure that it gave off was so powerful that it did not pale in comparison to the Dark Star Emperor. As it fell down, an extremely sharp bone arrow had already shot out, stabbing straight towards the Dark Star Emperor. This life-devouring beast that could rival the Dark Star Emperor was clearly the owner of the bone arrow from earlier. The Dark Star Emperor remained calm. His presence rose up as indescribably pure energy erupted like a tsunami. He directly punched out. Boom! His punch moved faster than the bone arrow. Before the arrow had even approached him, he had already landed his attack on the life-devouring beast. There was a deafening boom, and the falling shadow of the life-devouring beast immediately halted before the punch actually pushed it away. In the end, there was a heavy rumble, and its powerful body struck the ground heavily like a mountain, shaking up the surroundings. However, it had managed to land with balance, having endured the powerful attack of the Dark Star Emperor. This powerful life-devouring beast did not suffer any wounds, as if its hide was thick enough to completely endure the attacks from the Dark Star Emperor. Only now could its figure be made out. It was a life-devouring beast several thousand meters in length, resembling an earth drake. There were 9 huge bone arrows protruding from its back. The arrows could clearly change in size. During the first long-ranged attack, it had only been around 10 meters long, but looking at it now, every single one of them were several hundred meters long. Roar! It was clearly not the first time that the Earth Drake and the Dark Star Emperor had met. Its eyes were filled with hatred. As soon as it landed on the ground, it let out a deep roar and directly charged at the Dark Star Emperor. Immediately, a battle that could shake up the entire mountain range erupted between the Earth Drake and the Dark Star Emperor. Booms rang out constantly, as if they wanted to bring the sky down. The Earth Drake had also reached the 9th heavenly layer of Infinite Prime, at the same realm of cultivation as the Dark Star Emperor. However, as they clashed, it was clearly slightly weaker than the Dark Star Emperor. The Dark Star Emperor was simply too powerful. He had already been suppressed by the Grand Exalt's will in the 2 World Mountains, such that he was unable to unleash his full strength, yet he was still able to maintain some advantage as he faced the strongest life-devouring beast of the 2 World Mountains under these circumstances. He had the upper hand, but it was still very difficult for the Dark Star Emperor to defeat the Earth Drake. That was because the Earth Drake's defenses were far too powerful. None of the attacks from the Dark Star Emperor were able to cause any severe injuries. Even if he left behind a few small wounds, they would close up in the blink of an eye in the face of the Earth Drake's terrifying life force. And, the Earth Drake would constantly replenish its energy within the 2 World Mountains. As long as it remained here, its energy would recover constantly. It was truly endless. As they clashed, the primordial realm life-devouring beasts that rushed over all arrived one after another. They joined in on the battle to encircle the Dark Star Emperor with the Earth Drake. The Dark Star Emperor was in an encirclement of several dozen primordial realm life-devouring beasts. Jian Chen watched the Dark Star Emperor's movements closely from elsewhere in the mountain range. The Dark Star Emperor did not disguise his presence, and the disturbance from the fighting was just too great. With Jian Chen's strength at the primordial realm, he knew what was going on even without paying special attention. However, when he discovered that the Dark Star Emperor could actually hold off all the life-devouring beasts of the entire mountain range alone, it left him slightly shocked. If the Dark Star Emperor displayed such great strength in the territory of the Dark Star race, he would not be surprised at all, as the Dark Star Emperor already possessed the battle prowess of a chaotic prime. Even killing all these life-devouring beasts by himself would make perfect sense. But this was the 2 World Mountains. He remained so powerful despite having his strength suppressed, which forced Jian Chen to re-evaluate the Dark Star Emperor's strength. At this moment, Jian Chen's expression changed. Several million kilometers away, the senses of his soul discovered someone familiar. It was the Vice Hall Master of the 5th Divine Hall, Dou Wujin. He had arrived in the depths of the mountains too, but unlike how brazen the Dark Star Emperor had been, Dou Wujin kept his presence completely concealed, searching through the depths carefully. He constantly used a secret technique in an attempt to sense for something. He did not alarm any life-devouring beasts. He even went out of his way to avoid God King life-devouring beasts. Jian Chen could discover Dou Wujin, but Dou Wujin was unable to discover Jian Chen, as even the senses of outsiders would be greatly limited here, let alone members of the Dark Star race. Jian Chen's soul was different too. Combined with him purposefully hiding it, even if he ran into people at higher cultivation levels than him, they would still struggle to detect the senses of his soul in the unique environment of the 2 World Mountains. Soon after he discovered Dou Wujin, the senses of Jian Chen's soul enveloped another area. 500 kilometers from Dou Wujin, the 10th Hall Master, Feng Shui, had appeared too. It was not only the 2 of them. Jian Chen even spotted the Vice Hall Master of the 7th Divine Hall, Enlai. The 2 World Mountains were so large that even if Jian Chen expanded the senses of his soul completely, he would struggle to envelope even a tenth of it. Yet, he actually managed to discover 3 primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race in such a short amount of time within the range his soul covered. This immediately made Jian Chen shiver as an absurd thought crossed his head. Surely the primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race had not all been mobilized. But in the next moment, he took off in a flash and rapidly flew towards the lake where he had left behind Kun Tian's armor and sword. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2807, Reunion. The senses of his soul grasped every single movement of Dou Wujin, Enlai, and Feng Shui clearly. The 3 of them were not too far apart, and they had not been moving about. They all remained still, using secret techniques to sense for something. All of this pointed to the fact that they all possessed a unique searching ability. Perhaps this searching ability could directly detect members of the Dark Star race within a certain range, or perhaps it could detect a certain object. However, Jian Chen guessed that this searching ability probably detected a specific item. For example, even the Vice Hall Master of the 7th Divine Hall, Duff, a first heavenly layer infinite prime, could search for a single droplet of essence blood through a space ring in this vast region of the 2 world mountains. Such a venture was like looking for a needle in a haystack. When I left the 5th Divine Hall, I had left everything that belonged to Kun Tian in the 5th Divine Hall already. I didn't even bring Sacred Feather's essence blood with me. All I took was Kun Tian's armor and sword. The armor and sword were all repaired after being damaged. If I've guessed correctly, the Dark Star race should be able to sense the existence of God artifacts within a certain range. I hope they haven't found the 2 God artifacts I hid in the den of the primordial realm life-devouring beast. Though, even if they find it, it should be fine. I'll just have to come up with some excuses to explain myself. Though, it's still better to avoid this altogether, thought Jian Chen. Although he had spent some time as the 5th Hall Master already, he obviously did not have a complete understanding of the methods and secret techniques that the Dark Star race was capable of in such a short time frame. However, he did make preparations beforehand and had come up with a method of dealing with this a long time ago. The next part of his journey was smooth sailing. Under Jian Chen's careful concealment, let alone God King life-devouring beasts, even primordial realm experts would struggle to detect him. Before long, Jian Chen returned to the lake where he hid Kun Tian's God artifacts by following the imprints he had left behind. The primordial realm life-devouring beast that dwelled in the lake had already left this place when the Dark Star Emperor's presence leaked out, rushing off towards the Dark Star Emperor. By now, Jian Chen had already recovered Kun Tian's appearance. Even his presence was exactly the same as Kun Tian's. However, it was just withdrawn, so not even a sliver leaked out. He carefully lurked nearby, cautiously extending the senses of his soul in all directions as secretively as possible. He covered a range of several million kilometers. Only after confirming there were no members of the Dark Star race there did he retrieve his 2 God artifacts. He extended his hand, reaching into the empty space before him. With that, the space seemed to become a surface of water, undulating with spatial ripples. A small part of Jian Chen's arm vanished into the space there. This did not last for too long, just a few seconds. When Jian Chen pulled his arm out again, the 2 God artifacts he had hid there were now in his hand. Afterwards, there was a flash, and the armor was already equipped on him. Now, he had already become the 5th Hall Master, Kun Tian, again. Several million kilometers away from Jian Chen in the depths of the 2 world mountains, the Vice Hall Master Dou Wujin currently avoided all life-devouring beasts with his presence completely concealed as he carefully searched this region. I hope the Hall Master is fine. He has obtained a fragment of the Star Beast's memories after all. He entered the 2 world mountains in search of a fortuitous opportunity to drastically increase his strength. To be blessed by the star beast, it means the Hall Master is a person of great luck and fortune. He'll definitely be fine. As Dou Wujin searched carefully with his secret technique, he secretly prayed for Kun Tian inside. Their fifth divine hall had been oppressed by the seventh divine hall for all these years. Now, their Hall Master had finally broken through, giving them the strength to contend with the seventh divine hall. As a matter of fact, their fifth divine hall even had a chance of surpassing the seventh divine hall as their Hall Master's strength continued to grow, which left the three vice Hall Masters very satisfied. As a result, Dou Wujin believed the fifth divine hall could not go without their Hall Master. Otherwise, with everything the fifth divine hall and servant divine hall had been through across all these years, life would definitely become difficult for the three vice Hall Masters. Although they would never kill one another, the harassment they would face definitely would not decrease. This time, the primordial realm experts that the fifth divine hall had sent in was not just Dou Wujin. Bing Yuan and Taro were present too, except several million kilometers existed between each of them. They formed a huge net that swept through the depths of the mountains. Each person was responsible for a region as they undertook a detailed search operation. Kun Tian, where are you? Come out, please. The 10th Hall Master, Feng Shui, could be described as the most anxious one out of the group, and she became more and more worried as time went on. In particular, when she remembered the news of the presence of several dozen primordial realm life-devouring beasts acting up in the depths from a few days ago, she struggled to remain calm. Her relationship with Kun Tian was anything but ordinary. She even worried more about Kun Tian than the three vice Hall Masters of the fifth divine hall. Getty, how dare you force Kun Tian into the depths of the two-world mountains? If anything happens to Kun Tian, I'll never spare you. Even though I'm not your opponent, I'll definitely make things difficult for you, Feng Shui ground her teeth. She rapidly flew through the mountains. With her cultivation at the fifth heavenly layer, she could cross several hundred kilometers in an instant even when purposefully slowing down to conceal herself. Looks like Feng Shui is really quite attached to Kun Tian. That makes it even less clever for me to see her. On another side, Jian Chen withdrew the senses of his soul before flying in Dou Wujin's direction under Kun Tian's identity. As he did that, Jian Chen continued to keep an eye on Dou Wujin's actions, wanting to confirm just what method Dou Wujin was using to find him. Very soon, only 10,000 kilometers existed between him and Dou Wujin. It was also at this moment that the armor and sword that belonged to Kun Tian suddenly emitted a strange pulse. At the same time, Dou Wujin shuddered violently 10,000 kilometers away. His gaze suddenly shifted in Jian Chen's direction and became filled with delight. Without any hesitation, he immediately flew over as quickly as he could. Just as I had expected. They can search for the two god artifacts on me, but looking at the distance, it only seems to respond within a range of 10,000 kilometers, Jian Chen thought. 10,000 kilometers could be crossed in a few seconds to primordial realm experts like Dou Wujin. Very soon, he turned into a blur and arrived before Jian Chen like a ghost. Hall Master. From afar, he spotted Jian Chen through the thick mist and immediately ravished with joy. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. I haven't seen Sun Ran, but I did sense his presence a few days ago. We haven't had any contact in the two-world mountains. I don't even know where he's hiding right now. Looks like Hall Master Sun Ran was the one who caused the violent activity in the mountains a few days ago. I wonder how Hall Master Sun Ran is doing right now, Dou Wujin said with some worry. At this moment, a great howl rang out in the distance. This came from the Dark Star Emperor. It was shrill and extremely penetrative, forming rings and rings of sound waves that spread out in all directions. It lingered in the two world mountains for a very long time. Hearing the howl, Dou Wujin's expression changed, as if he had let out a sigh of relief. He said to Jian Chen, "Hall Master, the Emperor is telling us to pull out of the two world mountains. They've probably found Hall Master Sun Ren already. Let's leave quickly. The Emperor will be able to conserve some strength the sooner we get out." Jian Chen and Dou Wujin began to make their way out of the two world mountains by flying. As all the primordial realm life-devouring beasts in the two world mountains had been drawn away by the Dark Star Emperor, there was nothing Dou Wujin needed to consider on the way back. They unleashed their full speed, leaving the region of the mist very quickly and returning to the territory of the Dark Star race. Oof! We're finally out. The depths of the two world mountains suppresses our strength just too much. It's far too repressive in there. I never want to visit that goddamned place again. Dou Wujin sucked in the air of the Dark Star world in a satisfied manner. Kun Tian, are you sick of living? You actually ran into the depths of the two world mountains recklessly. Do you have any idea just how dangerous it is in there? Don't you know this place is a forbidden zone that members of our race must never set foot in? Suddenly, a furious shout rang out. Feng Shui of the 10th Divine Hall rushed out from the two world mountains, arriving before Jian Chen with a complexion that had darkened from danger. Her sharp gaze was filled with almost uncontrollable anger. She gave Jian Chen a fierce scolding the moment she saw him. Disguised as Kun Tian, there was nothing Jian Chen could say when he was met with the furious yet extremely concerned Feng Shui. He felt rather helpless. However, as more and more people emerged from the mountains, Feng Shui could not help but tone down her scolding. She stood to one side silently. Before long, all the primordial realm experts who had entered the two world mountains returned to the territory of the Dark Star race. Jian Chen glanced past them and discovered that apart from Sun Ran, all the Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters were present. Even Getty from the 7th Divine Hall was among them. However, none of them left. Instead, they gathered together and gazed at the depths of the two world mountains. That was because the deafening booms and the furious howls of life-devouring beasts in there showed no signs of stopping. The Dark Star Emperor was still locked in an intense battle against several dozen life-devouring beasts. Their battle was absolutely devastating. Even from tens of million or even hundreds of million kilometers away, they could still sense the shaking landscape of the mountain depths. Why is the Emperor still in there? He has been holding off several dozen regional king life-devouring beasts all alone. It must have exhausted his energy drastically. Not only do the depths of the two world mountains suppress our strength, but we can't recover our energy either. With time, even the Emperor and his exceptional prowess won't be able to outlast these regional kings, said a Vice Hall Master of the 10th Divine Hall. He was anxious, worrying for the Emperor's safety. Afterwards, no one said another word. Several dozen primordial realm experts just stood there together, everyone extremely stern. The atmosphere became exceedingly tense. Moreover, many people had already begun to gather their strength secretly, ready to charge into the two world mountains to receive the Dark Star Emperor at any time. The Dark Star Emperor was very powerful. He was truly the strongest among the Dark Star race, but right now, he faced all the life-devouring beasts in the entire two world mountains, which made the Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters gathered there uncertain. They did not worry for too long. After almost a minute, the booms echoing in the depths finally came to a halt. Very soon, a figure with a surging presence shot out of the two world mountains like a bolt of lightning. He was the Dark Star Emperor. He had already left the two world mountains. Even though he moved extremely quickly, he remained completely composed, which made it obvious that his retreat was not because he could not handle these life-devouring beasts, but rather because he was reluctant to continue this pointless conflict with them. Emperor. The moment the Dark Star Emperor emerged, the anxious Hall Masters and Vice Hall Masters all beamed in joy. Their tense hearts finally settled back down. Jian Chen looked at the Dark Star Emperor. He had truly heard a lot about the Dark Star Emperor and his reputation already. Even before he had entered the Dark Star world, he had already learnt about the Dark Star Emperor's existence from the Heartless Child. However, today was the first time he had seen the Dark Star Emperor in the flesh despite all the time he had spent in the Dark Star world already. The Dark Star Emperor did not seem particularly old. He maintained the youthful appearance of a 20-year-old. He wore a set of long, black robes, and his handsome face was filled with a valiant coldness. He remained stern and serious. However, the pale, gray hair and snowy white eyebrows that basically only appeared on a geriatric completely contrasted against his youthful appearance. A fortune that could not even allow him to break through a minor realm of cultivation, even if it came from the planetary beast, greatly diminished everyone's interest. Disappointment appeared clearly in Feng Shui's gaze too. As someone with grievances that ran deep with Kun Tian, the heart of the 7th Hall Master Getty did indeed tighten when he heard that Kun Tian had obtained some power left behind by the planetary beast, but noticing he still remained at the 6th heavenly layer, he immediately eased up again. At this moment, Jian Chen continued, however, what leaves me somewhat perplexed is that the memories of the planetary beast I obtained from the miniature world has to do with God King Grass. God King Grass? Continue. The Dark Star Emperor frowned. The Dark Star race had studied God King Grass for countless years now, but the results they had achieved still made them worth nowhere close to how much the outsiders valued them. The records about God King Grass in the planetary beast's memories are not detailed. After all, I only obtained an incomplete part of it. If I spend some time tidying through it, I might be able to produce a few leads. However, I'll need large quantities of God King Grass to research and experiment with. If I really can find the method to make use of the energy in God King Grass, it would be of extremely great significance to our race, Jian Chen said rather enthusiastically. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Since you've grasped a method like this from the planetary beast's memories, you must do everything you can to complete this method. You mustn't waste even a moment. The 9 other divine halls must fully cooperate with Kun Tian, ordered the Dark Star Emperor. By fully cooperate, he obviously implied the 9 other divine halls had to provide Jian Chen with what he needed. That was because every single divine hall had stocked up quite a lot of high-grade God King Grass. Yes, Emperor, the 8 hall masters all answered together. They were extremely straightforward, without any reluctance at all. High-grade God King Grass was not particularly rare among the Dark Star race. Moreover, there was nothing they could do with it either. If Kun Tian really managed to find a method to comprehend the laws within the God King Grass, then it would become a great opportunity for their strength to skyrocket. Seeing how everything unfolded so smoothly, Jian Chen was overjoyed too. Originally, he had only come up with his story of obtaining more memories from the planetary beast in the depths of the 2 world mountains on the spot, but he never expected the primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race to be so convinced by his words, giving him exactly what he wanted in such a simple manner. This was definitely an unexpected surprise. However, as soon as he considered the limited value of high-grade God King Grass among the Dark Star race, Jian Chen came to an understanding too. Perhaps they had agreed so happily, without the slightest objection or suspicion, because it had something to do with the fact that God King grass was worth nothing in the eyes of these hall masters. In the end, the sorrow and seriousness that came from Sun Rant's death had been easily washed away by Jian Chen with the matter regarding the God King grass. After leaving the Dark Star Divine Hall, Jian Chen returned to the fifth Divine Hall and sat down on the Hall Master's throne calmly. Below him, Dou Wujin, Taro, and Bing Yuan stood side by side, reporting the events of the past few days to him. Hall Master, this is the God-tier heavenly resource offered up by the Heavenly Lightning clan of the 100 Saints City. It's called the Glazed Fruit of Scarlet Blood, and it's a precious item specially for healing the soul. Bing Yuan presented the Glazed Fruit of Scarlet Blood as soon as he had the opportunity. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 28:14, Plundering as he goes. The 10 divine halls of the Dark Star race did not follow any particular ranking. Divine halls that came first were not necessarily stronger. For example, the 5th and 7th divine halls. Even though the 5th divine hall ranked ahead of the 7th divine hall, the 7th divine hall had suppressed the 5th divine hall for all these years. Of course, there was one exception among the 10 divine halls, the 1st divine hall. The 1st divine hall truly ranked first among the 10 divine halls, as the 1st hall master was the only 7th heavenly layer infinite prime among the Dark Star race right now. The 7th heavenly layer already belonged to late infinite prime. Although it was only a minor realm of cultivation ahead of the 6th heavenly layer, there was indeed a clear divide between the two realms of cultivation. The 1st Hall Master was the expert only second to the Dark Star Emperor within the Dark Star race, as the Dark Star race did not possess any 8th heavenly layer infinite primes. Aside from the Dark Star Emperor at the 9th heavenly layer, the second strongest was the 1st Hall Master at the 7th heavenly layer. The other 9 Hall Masters all possessed strength around the 5th or 6th heavenly layers. Currently, a grey-robed old man sat on the Hall Master's throne in the 1st Divine Hall. Even though he sat with his legs crossed, it was quite obvious from his small size that he definitely was an extremely short and skinny person. Moreover, he was extremely old, such that his wrinkles had already become indistinguishable from one another. His long, withered, grayish-white hair seemed to have lost most of its life force already, having fallen off in large chunks. As such, he seemed half-bald, with a large portion of his shiny scalp revealed. This old man was the 1st Hall Master, Qiu Changsheng. Beneath Qiu Changsheng stood 4 primordial realm experts. 3 of them were Vice Hall Masters of the 1st Divine Hall, while the last one was Vice Hall Master Dou Wujin from the 5th Divine Hall. In my knowledge, the 2nd and 10th Divine Halls have already handed all the high-grade God King grass in their possession to your 5th Divine Hall. With the quantity from the 2 Divine Halls and what your 5th Divine Hall already possesses, you should have almost 100,000 stalks of high-grade God King grass in your hands now. Is that still not enough to satisfy what you need for experimenting? The 1st Hall Master on the throne asked. His voice was extremely hoarse with age such that he seemed feeble. Hall Master Changsheng, you should know that the memories our Hall Master inherited are incomplete. In order to make up for the missing information, our Hall Master obviously needs to undertake tremendous amounts of research. High-grade God King grass will definitely be depleted at an astonishing pace during the research process. The only difference was the vital energy in the ancestral sacred earth was at an extremely high level of quality, and the vital energy seemed to contain the presence of ways. Only after inspecting the clump of blood-red ancestral sacred earth in the box did Jian Chen carefully place it into his space ring. He asked Bing Yuan, "How much of the ancestral sacred earth do you normally use to exchange with the outsiders?" "Hall Master, it takes an extremely long time for ancestral sacred earth to form, so whenever the 10 divine halls release ancestral sacred earth onto the market, it's always in extremely small quantities. Our race will probably exchange 2 to 4 taels of ancestral sacred earth with the outsiders over the course of a century," Bing Yuan said. TL, 16 taels form a caddy, and an extremely rough approximation of a caddy is half a kilogram for metric and a pound for imperial. In other words, a caddy and a half would be 24 taels. Jian Chen was secretly shocked. Ancestral sacred earth was worth far more than he had imagined. He had never thought the outsiders would only obtain 4 taels of ancestral sacred earth at most from the Dark Star race over a century. Right now, he possessed a total of a caddy and a half of ancestral sacred earth. In other words, the outsiders would have to spend 600 years at the very least to obtain the same quantity of ancestral sacred earth from the Dark Star race. Below, Bing Yuan was hesitant. He hesitated for a very long time before finally gathering the courage to say reluctantly, "Hall Master, the fruit of nurturing ways the Emperor planted in the medicinal garden is currently evolving. Recently, the medicinal garden has been depleting divine crystals several dozen times faster than before. The divine crystals our 5th divine hall has gathered over the years is probably not enough to satisfy the medicinal garden. As for the outsiders in the 100 Saint City, they often offer extremely extravagant prices to purchase ancestral sacred earth. As a result, please forgive me for my boldness, but I'd like to request the Hall Master to save some ancestral sacred earth to exchange with the outsiders so that we can gather the divine crystals we need for the medicinal garden." Jian Chen raised an eyebrow and asked without concern, "How many divine crystals can you get from the outsiders with a tael of ancestral sacred earth?" "Several 100 million supreme-grade divine crystals at the very least. If the bidding war between the outsiders is intense, a tael of ancestral sacred earth can even fetch over 1 billion supreme-grade divine crystals," Bing Yuan said. His eyes shone slightly. Clearly, a sum of supreme-grade divine crystals that big interested even him. Although members of the Dark Star race were unable to absorb the energy in divine crystals for themselves due to the different energy they used, divine crystals were the only way to provide the medicinal garden with sufficient energy. That was because the medicinal garden was filled with heavenly resources that came from the saints' world. As a result, these heavenly resources required energy from the saints' world to grow. Even with Jian Chen's mental preparation, he leapt in fright when he heard the number, as that meant he now possessed wealth worth a sum of billions or even tens of billions of divine crystals. Even the divine crystals he had obtained from emptying out the treasuries of a few peak organizations on the cloud plane were nowhere close to this number. However, he also understood that only the Dark Star race would exchange something as valuable as ancestral sacred earth for divine crystals. If this were the saints' world, Jian Chen did not doubt at all that ancestral sacred earth would be treated as a rare treasure that never appeared on the market. It could not be purchased no matter how many divine crystals were offered. It was basically something that could only be exchanged for with treasures of the same value. However, now that the ancestral sacred earth was in his hands, why would he ever exchange something so precious for divine crystals? He said, "Leave the issue of the divine crystals to me. Come, accompany me to the 100 Saint City." In the Pantheon Divine Hall of the 100 Saint City, everyone had already gathered together. The many prodigies responsible for the entire city assembled once more. Apart from Chu Tian, Gong Ruiz, Kong Feiying, Zhou Ji, Zhao Wenbin, and the resplendent young master of the Dire Wolf clan who had obtained a grand exalt's legacy, Jin Hong, the other prodigies were all here. They did not talk with one another. All of their faces were extremely ugly, hiding a hint of extreme anger that had been repressed. However, no matter how emotional they were, none of them spoke up. The entire Pantheon Divine Hall was dead silent, which made the atmosphere seem extremely heavy. This was all because an uninvited guest had come to the Pantheon Divine Hall. Clearly, the various organizations were rather reluctant to welcome this uninvited guest, but due to certain reasons, they were forced to personally receive this guest of rather special status. And the reason why so many people were furious was because of where this guest currently resided. The representatives of the various organizations all sat around a large, round table in the Pantheon Divine Hall. There was no sense of order, which also represented that everyone stood on equal footing. Yet, the uninvited guest had taken a chair and levitated it 3 meters above the center of the table, sitting up there. This action was equivalent to trampling over all the prodigies in the Pantheon Divine Hall. As a matter of fact, it was possible to interpret this as sitting directly on top of all the prodigies in the Pantheon Divine Hall. Unfortunately, the many organizations of the 100 Saints city could only afford to be angered by this person's arrogance. They dared not speak up. That was because the uninvited guest was one of the 3 Vice Hall Masters of the 7th Divine Hall, Enlai. Enlai was a 4th heavenly layer infinite prime. Even within the Dark Star race, he was an expert that ranked extremely close to the top. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 28:16, See Wuxia facing a 4th heavenly layer infinite prime. Even if all the organizations in the 100 Saints city banded together and unleashed everything in their grasp, they had no chance at fending him off. This was because they were unable to bring in any of the high-level secret treasures from their clans to the Dark Star world. As such, even arrogant prodigies like them who never took Infinite Prime seriously in the Saints world were forced to submit obediently and treat them with caution. Even if they felt furious, they were forced to endure it. All of them understood a principle. If they were killed in the territory of the Dark Star race, then no matter how powerful the clans behind them were, it would still be impossible for them to avenge them. So what do you think? I need to make this clear with you all. My time is limited. I don't have so much time to waste here on you. Every organization must offer up 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals to our 7th Divine Hall every century in exchange for a friendly relationship. The 3 Vice Hall Masters of the 7th Divine Hall had pleaded arduously with the Hall Master for this condition. Don't waste it, Enlai said in an unconcerned fashion with one leg crossed over the other on the chair in the air. The fascinating expressions of the prodigies seemed to be beneath his attention. Instead, he inspected the Pantheon Divine Hall like no one was around. His gaze seemed to be able to pass through the Pantheon Divine Hall, allowing him to see all of 100 Saints city. This is a very impressive city. The price that went into building this city in the past was probably so great that it even took tremendous effort for the extremely wealthy clans behind you. Just this city alone is worth far more than a measly sum of 1 billion supreme-grade divine crystals. After all, in the resource-rich Saints world, supreme-grade divine crystals are a renewable resource. The supply is truly endless. In other words, 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals might sound like a lot, but it's actually nothing in the boundless Saints world. And, in the upcoming century, even if we ignore just how great of a deal you'll get with the resources you obtain from our race, the items you obtain from the 2 world mountains alone possess immeasurable value. If you calculate it like that, exchanging 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals for a century of peace is a very good deal, isn't it? Enlai spoke relaxedly as if 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals was nothing. However, the depths of his eyes hid burning desire. 10 billion divine crystals was definitely not a small sum to the 7th Divine Hall, as they often had to trade away a lot of ancestral sacred earth in the past to gather so many divine crystals. Most importantly, if the seventh divine hall possessed this sum of divine crystals, it would definitely be enough to deal with the urgent issue they currently faced. None of the prodigies said anything in the Pantheon Divine Hall. Their faces were terrifyingly sunken, as even to the colossal clans behind them, 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals was a tremendous sum. The Vice Hall Master of the 7th Divine Hall had demanded 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals right off the bat, and he only promised to avoid causing them any trouble for a century. This was no longer merely demanding an exorbitant price. Ha ha ha, I didn't think Vice Hall Master and Lai would actually be here. Looks like I've come a step too late. At this moment, a great peal of laughter rang out, and a thunderous rumble followed. A great force had already smashed the firmly shut entrance to the Pantheon Divine Hall to pieces. Ripples of powerful energy wreaked havoc, sending all the prodigies in the Pantheon Divine Hall flying and crashing into the wall at the back in an extremely horrible spee. Even the huge, round table in the Pantheon Divine Hall shattered before the energy ripples. In the blink of an eye, the Pantheon Divine Hall had been reduced to a mess. A man in white had suddenly barged into the Divine Hall. The man seemed to be in his 30s. His facial features were delicate, and he seemed rather refined, like a scholar. However, the presence he emitted was the same as Enlai's, also at the fourth heavenly layer of infinite prime. Enlai squinted slightly, and his face immediately became rather ugly. And I was wondering who it was. As it turns out, it's Vice Hall Master Si Wuxing of the 6th Divine Hall. Si Wuxing, hasn't your 6th Divine Hall always treated the 100 Saint City as something beneath your attention? Apart from a few occasional exchanges, your Divine Hall hasn't cared about the 100 Saint City at all over all these years. So why has your 6th Divine Hall suddenly changed today, sending a mighty Vice Hall Master like you to pay a personal visit to this place? By now, the prodigies the energy had sent flying all climbed up. They gazed at the obliterated entrance of the Pantheon Divine Hall, and their hearts immediately sank completely. Recently, their 100 Saint City had obtained the protection of the 5th Divine Hall. Combined with how the 7th Divine Hall never came to make trouble for them again, they gradually dropped their guard. They had maintained an entrance in the protective formation for people to enter and leave the city, just so the city could remain in operation. Unexpectedly, the Vice Hall Master of the 7th Divine Hall had snuck his way in through this gate silently despite his status, directly coming to the Pantheon Divine Hall and stating exorbitant demands for 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals. If it were Enlai, then it would not have been too horrible. After all, he had not used any brute force. There was still room for negotiation. However, the person who had come just now was not as amiable. He destroyed the main entrance as soon as he arrived, leaving all the prodigies unsettled. Right now, they even began to wonder whether there had been some great social upheaval in the Dark Star race that made the 5th Divine Hall lose all of its authority. Had the personal promise of the 5th Hall Master become so worthless that any old Vice Hall Master could simply walk over it? Vice Hall Master Si Wuxing of the 6th Divine Hall smiled and said slowly, "Indeed. In the past, our 6th Divine Hall had never cared about the existence of the 100 Saint City, as in our eyes, the 100 Saint City is merely an ant. It's beyond what our 6th Divine Hall can be bothered with. Moreover, this ant can even provide us with what we needed from time to time, so we're obviously happy for it to exist. However, the situation today is rather different, because that has greatly depleted the divine crystals of our 6th Divine Hall. Although there are some other tiny ants serving our 6th Divine Hall, the divine crystals those tiny ants can offer is far too little. It would have been enough in the past, but given the current circumstances, the divine crystals they can provide are nowhere near enough to keep up with the demand. As a result, with no other choice, all we can do is come to the 100 Saint City," said Si Wuxing. "That's obvious. The outsiders who work with your 6th Divine Hall are mostly organizations with chaotic primes in the Saints' world. Even if some of them have a few grand primes, they all rank towards the bottom among peak organizations. Of course they can't be compared to these organizations of the 100 Saint City, and Lai said nonchalantly before changing the topic. Si Wuqing, may I ask what your sixth divine hall plans on exchanging with them for the divine crystals? Exchange? No, no, no. And Lai, you'd be taking it too far with our sixth divine hall if that's what you think. How come only your seventh divine hall is able to demand divine crystals from the 100 Saint City for free, while our sixth divine hall must exchange items in return? Wouldn't that just mean our sixth divine hall is not as great as your seventh divine hall? If your seventh divine hall was stronger than us, then sure, we'd accept it. But in reality, our sixth divine hall is still slightly stronger than your seventh divine hall. Isn't that correct? Si Wuqing said in a deliberately ambiguous manner. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 28:17, the major player arrives and Lai's face sank slightly. Originally, he had already been prepared to take everything that the 100 Saint City could offer up for himself. He believed that while not all of the several dozen peak organizations stationed in the 100 Saint City would be willing to pay up such a great sum of divine crystals in exchange for peace, at least a third of them would. Even if it were only a third of the organizations, the amount of divine crystals they could gather would be an astronomical sum. Not only would it cover the seventh divine hall's sudden increase in demand for divine crystals because of the medicinal garden, but it would also leave them with quite a lot to exchange with the other divine halls, or perhaps they could build up a reserve supply for the future. After all, they had to maintain the medicinal garden, so the consumption of divine crystals would be endless. The Dark Star race could never have enough divine crystals. But, never did he imagine that Si Wuqing would actually show up at a time like this, clearly demanding a share as well. Without a doubt, this had directly halved what Lai was expecting to receive. Obviously, Lai became extremely displeased. Si Wuqing, for this millennium, our seventh divine hall is in power. The various matters of the Dark Star race, regardless of size, are to be handled by our seventh divine hall. The actions of your sixth divine hall are crossing the line a little, Lai said with a sunken face. With everything up for grabs, he absolutely refused to give up on any part of it. Although the sixth and seventh divine halls had always stood on the same side, a few sparks would still fly when great benefits were presented before them. In particular, with how the supply of divine crystals for every divine hall had become critically low, getting a share of this had only become even more precious. That's correct. Your seventh divine hall is indeed responsible for governing the Dark Star race this millennium. Though, why did I hear that when your seventh hall master personally set off to destroy the 100 Saint City, he had been forced to stop because of the fifth hall master's appearance? Your seventh divine hall has even given some leeway to our old rival, the fifth divine hall, yet you treat us, your old ally, so heartlessly and selfishly. Is our relationship as allies beneath your relationship with the fifth divine hall? Or should I ask, just which side is your seventh divine hall standing on? Si Wuqing smiled faintly, remaining composed and unconcerned the entire time. He continued, Lai, I don't want to continue mouthing off with you here. The sixth divine hall only has one demand. We want half of the divine crystals that the 100 Saint City offers up. Afterwards, Si Wuqing's gaze shifted to the back of the Pantheon Divine Hall, at the various organizations who had gathered together in a horrible shape. He said indifferently, listen up. It's like what Lai said earlier. Every clan must provide 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals to us. In exchange, it'll be the same as what Lai said before. During this period, the seventh divine hall won't target you anymore, nor will they obstruct you in any way or form. Otherwise. Si Wuqing's expression suddenly colded and chilling killing intent shot from his eyes. He said frigidly, "Don't even think about appearing among the Dark Star race again." The killing intent of a primordial realm expert immediately made the temperature throughout the entire divine hall plummet. The prodigies gathered there all felt like they were standing in a cavern of ice as a chill ran down their spines. This was not because they were timid, or because they were frightened. Instead, it was an ordinary reaction when God Kings faced the killing intent of a primordial realm expert. The expressions of the prodigies in the Pantheon Divine Hall became ugly. 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals in exchange for a century. This was a sum that many of them could not provide. As peak organizations, they were indeed extremely wealthy, but they exhausted extremely large amounts of resources too. Enlai and Si Wuqing's request basically forced many of them into dire straits. Yet, they happened to be afraid to speak up, as in the Dark Star world, the statuses they prided themselves for in the Saints' world meant absolutely nothing. Even if they died, nothing would happen. No one would avenge them. Esteemed Hall Masters, there's something I'd like to ask, if I am permitted to do so. At this moment, Lei Yun of the Heavenly Lightning clan stood forward. He did not possess the arrogance of a descendant of a peak clan at all anymore. Instead, he was rather courteous and extremely careful. Si Wuqing's gaze landed on Lei Yun, and his lips slowly curled into a sinister smile. The clan you come from seems to be the Heavenly Lightning clan, right? I heard you possess some special methods and forcefully nurtured a heavenly resource to God tier. Impressive, very impressive. Our race has always admired the outside organizations that are capable. What do you have to say? You can be frank. Lei Yun paused for a moment before saying reluctantly, since the esteemed Hall Master already knows about the God-tier heavenly resource, the esteemed Hall Master must also know that our Heavenly Lightning clan specially prepared the heavenly resource for the 5th Divine Hall. Oh, yes, I do know about that. And then? Si Wuqing stared at Lei Yun in a mysterious manner. The 5th Divine Hall has promised that if we can provide him with God-tier heavenly resources that can heal his soul, the 5th Divine Hall will protect us. Now that we've already offered up a God-tier heavenly resource, we should now be under the protection of the 5th Divine Hall according to the agreement. Now that the 6th and the 7th Divine Halls are making such a great ruckus here, wouldn't the 5th Divine Hall? Towards the end, Lei Yun began to falter. There were certain matters he could not go into too much detail about, but basically everyone understood what he was saying. The 5th Divine Hall. You're still relying on the 5th Divine Hall holding up their promise right now? Si Wuqing stared at Lei Yun like he was looking at an idiot. He said, in the past, the 5th Divine Hall might have been able to protect you, as their 4 Divine Halls would be enough to contend with us. But now, it's impossible for their 4 Divine Halls to contend with us anymore. After a pause, perhaps Si Wuqing did not find his words particularly persuasive, so he continued. He began to boast. I'll tell you the truth. Since our 6th Divine Hall has decided to become involved with the matter of the 100 Saint City, and we're working together with the 7th Divine Hall, the 5th Divine Hall has completely lost the ability to protect you. Right now, even if the 5th Hall Master himself, Kun Tian, was here, he probably would not dare to speak up to our 2 Divine Halls. It's hilarious to think that you're still depending on the 5th Divine Hall's protection. How ignorant. Really? How come this Hall Master doesn't know the 6th and 7th Divine Halls are actually so capable enough to make this Hall Master shut up before you? I'd really like to witness for myself and see if your 6th and 7th Divine Halls actually possess this ability or not. However, as soon as Si Wuqing finished speaking, a cold, mocking voice rang out from outside. The appearance of this voice immediately made Si Wuqing's face freeze up. His expression immediately stiffened because he knew exactly whose voice this was. It was the 5th Hall Master he had mentioned moments prior, Kun Tian. Enlai's expression changed once again in the Pantheon Divine Hall. Suddenly, he turned around and looked in the direction of the main entrance. He saw the fifth hall master Kun Tian striding over through the air steadily, with his presence completely concealed. Behind him, Vice Hall Master Bing Yuan concealed his presence too, following along closely and silently. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 28:18, face-slapping. The arrival of the fifth hall master immediately filled the despaired and helpless prodigies with a shred of hope. All of them became emotional, and their gloomy faces riled up instantly. They had begun treating the fifth hall master as the person they relied on the most in the Dark Star race from a long time ago. Even though they knew they would not receive his protection if they could not offer up the god-tier heavenly resources that he demanded, they still placed great recognition and belief in him. After all, the fifth hall master had saved their lives in the past, even willing to take on the risk of going to war with the seventh divine hall to save them. With the kindness he had shown, the prodigies of the 100 Saints City clearly trusted the fifth hall master even more. On the other hand, looking at the 6th and 7th divine halls, not only had the former taken the 100 Saints City away from them, but they had almost destroyed them too. As for the latter, they had smashed the entrance of the Pantheon Divine Hall as soon as they arrived, behaving arrogantly and looking down on them all. They had completely treated them as lambs to the slaughter, showing nothing but ill intent. Compared to them, the 5th Divine Hall was like a benevolent god. They were worth relying on and trusting. Esteemed Hall Master, you've finally come. You have to help us, sir. Our 100 Saints City has clearly obtained your protection, so anyone who injures the people of our 100 Saints City is equivalent to injuring you. However, despite knowing our relationship with the 5th Divine Hall, the 6th and 7th Divine Halls have still threatened us, without even thinking about the 5th Divine Hall, even forcing us to cough up 10 billion supreme-grade divine crystals each century. They're basically leaving us with no choice at all. Lei Yun was the most riled up out of them, as well as the first one to speak up eagerly, kowtowing up to the 5th Hall Master. This was because their Heavenly Lightning clan had presented the 5th Divine Hall with a god-tier heavenly resource as promised. Technically, their Heavenly Lightning clan was already under the 5th Divine Hall's protection. With such a powerful backing, he finally gained a bit of confidence when he faced the 10 Divine Halls of the Dark Star race. As for Si Wuqing's blatant disdain and mockery of the 5th Divine Hall, Lu Yun only treated it as a series of boasts. After all, he could tell with a single glance of the 5th Hall Master's expression right now that the 5th Divine Hall's situation was nowhere near as bad as Si Wuqing had described. With what Lei Yun said, a sliver of coldness immediately flashed through Si Wuqing's eyes as heavy killing intent rose up inside. In his eyes, all outsiders were existences like ants, creatures he could crush at a whim. If they were obedient and constantly brought benefits to the Dark Star race, he could allow them to move around in his territory. But now, someone that was an insignificant ant in his eyes was actually trying to ruin his relationship with the 5th Hall Master. This was well beyond what he could allow to happen. You're looking to die. Si Wuqing spat out those words coldly. He was about to kill Lei Yun on the spot when his face changed drastically all of a sudden. This was because a mountainous presence descended suddenly, weighing on him such that his entire body sank. Even the circulation of energy in his body showed signs of sluggishness. Si Wuqing turned around and stared at Kun Tian with difficulty. There was dread in his eyes. After all, not only was Kun Tian the master of a divine hall, but his strength had reached the 6th heavenly layer of infinite prime. He trounced him in both status and strength. However, he soon seemed to remember something. The dread in his eyes vanished instantly, and his heart settled down too. He said sternly, Kun Tian, what do you think you're doing? Not only does this person have no respect, but he's actually trying to sow conflict into the relationship between us divine halls with his lowly status. Doesn't he deserve to be killed? Don't tell me you even plan on protecting someone like that, Hall Master Kun Tian. Si Wuqing was fearless, staring directly at Jian Chen. He behaved like he would never back down unless he received a satisfying explanation. This was because he firmly believed the side which the fifth Hall Master stood on, the side that had already been weaker, had weakened once again after losing the power of the eighth Hall Master. They should not have been bold enough to directly contend with them like in the past anymore. Otherwise, they would just be asking for humiliation. Vice Hall Master Enlai stood to one side silently. He had no plans on becoming involved with the dispute between Si Wuqing and the fifth Hall Master. His fear towards the fifth Hall Master did not diminish at all with Sun Rant's death. This was because he had personally witnessed the fifth Hall Master go crazy before. Having lost his memories, the fifth Hall Master was instead even more terrifying than in the past, even less of a person they could afford to provoke. Not only had his strength increased qualitatively, but his personality seemed to have become extreme too. Once he lost his temper, he would actually throw his life at others. Faced with a madman like that, even the seventh Hall Master Getty, who was much stronger than Kun Tian, was forced to take a step back. Jian Chen said nothing. He walked through the Pantheon Divine Hall at a regular pace, arriving in front of Si Wuqing steadily. His powerful presence continued to crush down on Si Wuqing before he raised a hand and directly slapped Si Wuqing across the face. Smack! A crisp sound rang out immediately. It was far too resonant, such that it was ear-splitting in the Pantheon Divine Hall. Caught off guard, Si Wuqing had been directly sent flying by Jian Chen's slap. Jian Chen's slap was extremely powerful, lifting all of Si Wuqing into the air. Half of his face had been reduced to a pulp as blood splattered everywhere. The Pantheon Divine Hall immediately became dead silent. The prodigies there watched as Si Wuqing sailed across the air, their hearts thumping vigorously. Everyone had been stunned. As convention went, it was fair to hit others, just not their faces. Not only had the fifth Hall Master slapped someone across the face, but the person he hit was even a revered Vice Hall Master. His actions left an extremely heavy impact on the prodigies. Primordial Realm experts, even just an Infinite Prime, were equivalent to elders in peak organizations with Grand Primes. They enjoyed a certain level of status and deserved a certain level of respect. In the Dark Star world, Primordial Realm experts were already regarded as figures who stood at the very apex, standing above everyone else. They possessed extremely revered statuses, yet he had just been slapped across the face mercilessly like this. This scene left all the prodigies rather dazed. Enlai on the side was left completely dumbstruck too. His entire brain seemed to stop working. Conflict among the Primordial Realm experts of the Dark Star race was very common, and full-blown battles happened from time to time too. However, it would all be in a controlled range. Being directly slapped across the face as a Primordial Realm expert, like what had happened right now, had definitely never happened before. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 28:19. Absolutely fearless. Gazing at the fifth Hall Master, who simply stood there coldly and unworried, Enlai's throat actually became rather dry for a moment. The main reason why he was bold enough to come to the 100 Saints City was because of Hall Master Sun Rant's death, which had drastically weakened the faction that the fifth Divine Hall was a part of. They no longer possessed the ability to contend with them. In his belief, the fifth Divine Hall would probably take a step back given the situation it was in when the 100 Saints City faced any issues, as long as it did not severely harm their interests. Yet, he never expected the fifth Divine Hall to completely ignore the logical course of action. Despite their faction already at an extremely great disadvantage, not only did he show no intentions of holding himself back, but he was even wilder than before instead. He actually slapped a vice hall master across the face as soon as he arrived. This was something extremely humiliating. Even if grievances did not exist between them, bitter hatred would still arise from this. He's mad. He's mad. Kuan Tian has completely lost his mind. Enlai could only curse inside. The high-handedness and haughtiness that the fifth hall master demonstrated right now made him think of retreating. The slap had left Vice Hall Master Si Wuqing stunned too. Jian Chen had sent him flying, and he actually forgot to climb back up when he fell on the ground. His face had completely blanked out, still yet to recover his senses. Only after 5 whole seconds did Si Wuqing finally respond. He remained in the same posture on the ground, except his body began to tremble violently. His eyes became bright red in that instant, completely bloodshot. In the next moment, surging fury and terrifying killing intent suddenly erupted from him. He leapt up from the ground violently, and his face became hideously twisted. He roared like a wild beast, "Kuan Tian, how dare you humiliate me like this? I will make you pay." In the Dark Star race, Vice Hall Masters were figures of revered status. Even though a certain disparity existed between them and Hall Masters, this disparity was not as great as Jian Chen imagined it to be. After all, everyone was infinite primes. They were all at the same realm of cultivation, not to mention that Si Wuqing was a 4th heavenly layer infinite prime at that. That kind of strength was only one minor level of cultivation lower than a few Hall Masters who still remained at the 5th heavenly layer. Boom! Immediately, Si Wuqing erupted with energy as the pressure of the primordial realm flooded out. With a pair of bloodshot eyes, he directly attacked Jian Chen, swinging the sword in his hand towards Jian Chen resolutely. Jian Chen remained calm and composed. Only a tremendous pressure erupted violently like a mountain, crushing down on Si Wuqing in a way even more terrifying than last time. Si Wuqing staggered, almost falling over. His face paled, and the light and energy on the sword he swung towards Jian Chen flickered. Jian Chen's presence had actually subdued the power of his attack to the greatest degree such that Jian Chen managed to catch the sharp tip easily and calmly between 2 fingers. Ding! Afterwards, there was a crisp sound. Jian Chen flicked his fingers gently, and the sharp tip between his fingers immediately began to tremble violently like it had sustained a heavy blow. At the same time, a force moved through the sword, reaching Si Wuqing's sword-wielding hand, immediately turning his entire right arm numb. However, Jian Chen had no plans of letting Si Wuqing go like this. He said coldly, "You're merely a Vice Hall Master, so how dare you directly refer to this Hall Master by name? You deserve to be punished for insubordination." As he said that, he approached Si Wuqing with a step and suppressed him with his presence before landing another slap on Si Wuqing's face and mercilessly sending him flying a second time. This time, he smacked the other half of Si Wuqing's face. Not only did the great force turn Si Wuqing's face into a blood pulp, but even cracks appeared in his skull. Si Wuqing was filled with hatred. He raised his head and roared out furiously, like a vicious beast wanting to launch a counterattack. However, Jian Chen was much more powerful than he imagined him to be. Against Jian Chen, not only was he in no shape to fight back despite his strength at the 4th heavenly layer of infinite prime, but he could not even dodge after being suppressed. I took back the 100 Saint City from Getty. Only I can decide the fate of the 100 Saint City. Other divine halls have no right to this. As a Vice Hall Master of the 6th Divine Hall, not only have you come to my territory to flaunt your powers, but you've even spoken insolently about me. You cannot be forgiven. Jian Chen said coldly. He arrived in front of Si Wuqing with a flash, directly stomping down heavily on his back before Si Wuqing could even climb up. The cracking sound of bones rang out. Jian Chen had shattered Si Wuqing's backbone with that, his foot reaching as far as his ribs. Basically all the bones in Si Wuqing's upper half had been crushed. His organs were in pieces. Si Wuqing let out a grunt and coughed up large amounts of blood, along with pieces of organs. This time, he had truly been heavily injured. Kuan Tian, how dare you treat me like this, Si Wuqing sprayed out with blood a few times as he said hoarsely. By now, his face had become pale white, and his hair was in a mess. His impressive bearing and demeanor from earlier had vanished a long time ago. Let alone you, even if your sixth hall master comes and dares to provoke me, I'll still give him a thorough beating, Jian Chen said coldly, radiating with fearlessness. Afterwards, he picked up the mess that Si Wuqing was from the ground and directly hurled him out of the 100 Saints City. Remember, the 100 Saints City is a place under my protection. Without my permission, no one is allowed to make trouble here. I won't spare anyone who does that. Outside the 100 Saints City, Si Wuqing, who had been squashed like a pancake, struck the ground in an extremely horrible shape. Due to being thrown out with far too much speed, he skid along the ground for several kilometers before finally stopping. Blood immediately spurted from his mouth. His spine had been crushed. Barely any of his bones in the upper half of his body were unbroken. Without the support of his bones, he was unable to stand up immediately, so all he could do was lay on the ground and ingest a few recovery pills he had in his space ring to heal. Kuan Tian, he let out a beast-like howl as his hatred and killing intent surged to the limit. He rested for a moment until his shattered spine began holding together before immediately taking off into the air, tottering away from here. In the Pantheon Divine Hall, after personally witnessing how Jian Chen crushed Si Wuqing, Anlai's heart immediately became icy cold. He discovered he had still ended up underestimating the madness of the Fifth Hall Master. In just a few seconds, he had actually reduced a Vice Hall Master to such a miserable, humiliating state over something so small. Chills even began running down his back. This was because nothing like this had ever happened to the primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race throughout their known history. At this moment, Jian Chen's gaze landed on Anlai. It became extremely sharp as he said coldly, "Anlai, have you come to make trouble in the territory under my protection too?" "No, no, no. You've misunderstood, Hall Master. I only came to the 100 Saints City to exchange some divine crystals with the organizations here. Since you're now here, Hall Master, I'll take my leave." Faced with Jian Chen's cold questioning, Anlai chose to yield without any hesitation at all. With the example he had made out of Si Wuqing, why would he still try to hold his ground? "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. At this moment, under the gazes of all the prodigies, Anlai could no longer bother with the issue of humiliation. He smiled apologetically and amicably, speaking in a very passive tone. He explained to Jian Chen meekly to clear up the misunderstanding. Afterwards, he did not stick around for another second longer. He left the Pantheon Divine Hall with his tail between his legs, flying away from the 100 Saints City like he was fleeing. Even though Anlai felt his behavior at the end in front of the prodigies was very humiliating, damaging his dignity as a Vice Hall Master, he shivered at the thought of the fate that Si Wuqing suffered. Whatever. Even though it's a little humiliating, it's nothing compared to what Si Wuqing went through. Anlai comforted himself inside. At the same time, he became extremely fearful of the Fifth Hall Master's fearlessness and unruliness. I need to report everything that happened in the 100 Saints City as it had occurred to the Hall Master as soon as possible. The Fifth Hall Master's way of handling matters is becoming more and more overbearing. He doesn't consider the consequences at all. If he continues like this without holding himself back, an unprecedented conflict will probably erupt between the 10 divine halls. A mighty Vice Hall Master with revered status had actually been slapped in front of a group of outsiders. The entire matter was horrible, and the consequences would be far too severe. With a heavy heart, Enlai flew quickly at a high altitude, reaching the Dark Night City as quickly as he could before returning to the 7th Divine Hall through the teleportation formation there. In the 7th Divine Hall, Getty sat on his throne in a rather anxious manner, worrying over the matters regarding the divine crystals. Below him, Vice Hall Master Duff stood with his arms by his side and said, "Hall Master, the rate at which the fruit of nurturing ways absorbs divine crystals has multiplied yet again, and it's still increasing. The time our divine crystals can provide is only decreasing. Around how much longer can they last?" Getty sat on his throne and asked with a slight headache. Their Dark Star race had never suffered a shortage of divine crystals like today. In only a few months, the fruit of nurturing ways had consumed enough divine crystals to maintain the medicinal garden for a millennium. This was actually because the energy required for the fruit of nurturing ways to become a high-grade heavenly resource was far too startling. Moreover, the origin energy their Dark Star race used was different from the Saints' world, so it could not nourish the fruit of nurturing ways. They could only rely on divine crystals to provide it with the energy it required. Naturally, divine crystals were depleted at an extremely startling rate. Less than 10 days. Duff paused before adding, and the 10 days are calculated based on the current rate the fruit of nurturing ways is absorbing energy at. This will definitely become much faster tomorrow, and it might even increase the day after tomorrow. As a result, we don't even have enough divine crystals to last 10 days. How many divine crystals have the outsiders under our control provided us with? Getty asked again. Every single divine hall cooperated with a few outside organizations that were weaker than the ones in the 100 Saint City, undertaking various transactions for their benefit. They've provided us with quite a lot, but they'll last for a few days at most, said Duff. Getty leaned against the throne and rubbed his temples rather painfully. We've all miscalculated. Who would have thought the fruit of nurturing ways would require several dozen times, or even 100 times, more energy than when it evolved to mid-grade last time? The other heavenly resources require nowhere near that much. We can only rely on Enlai now. Let's hope he achieves some success in the 100 Saint City. At this moment, the teleportation formation outside the 7th Divine Hall flashed. Enlai had returned from the 100 Saint City. Getty's face immediately lit up. He began to eagerly ask Enlai about the results of his trip to the 100 Saint City before he could even step into the hall. Very soon, Getty learnt about everything that had happened in the 100 Saint City. His face immediately changed, becoming extremely solemn with a hint of fury. He growled sternly, "How dare Kun Tian take it so far? He's crossed the line. He's towing our bottom line with this. How can a Vice Hall Master for heaven's sake go through so much humiliation?" Vice Hall Master Si Wuqing dragged his heavily injured body back to the 6th Divine Hall. He currently stood in the hall with his face covered in blood. His eyes were completely bloodshot as chilling killing intent radiated from his body. He was currently telling everyone how domineering and haughty the 5th Hall Master Kun Tian had been in the Pantheon Divine Hall. Kun Tian has truly gone too far. He actually humiliated a Vice Hall Master of our 6th Divine Hall to such a degree. He didn't just slap Si Wuqing's face, he slapped the face of our 6th Divine Hall too. Will our 6th Divine Hall still have any dignity if we don't get revenge? The 2nd Vice Hall Master of the 6th Divine Hall was exasperated as he said angrily. He resembled Si Wuqing slightly in appearance. He was Si Wuqing's elder brother by blood, Si Wuming, also a 4th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime. Apart from the brothers Si Wuqing and Si Wuming, there was the 3rd Vice Hall Master, O Guding. He was a 2nd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime and was also fuming. Out of the 3 Vice Hall Masters of the 6th Divine Hall, 2 were 4th Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes and 1 was a 2nd Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime. Their strength completely surpassed the 5th and 7th divine halls. As for the 6th hall master Irvin, he was a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime, and he had even broken through to this realm before the 7th hall master Getty. The 6th hall master Irvin sat on his throne emotionlessly. His face was icy cold as he said frigidly, "Send invitations to the hall masters of the 3rd, 4th, 7th, and 9th divine halls. We need to avenge Si Wuqing for the humiliation he suffered. Kun Tian must pay for his actions. The dignity of our 6th divine hall cannot be provoked." Back in the 100 Saints city, Jian Chen had no idea that the 6th hall master was already gathering his forces, wanting to make him pay for his actions. However, even if he knew, he would not care at all, as apart from the Dark Star Emperor, he feared nobody of the Dark Star race. Moreover, he only hoped to set off some internal strife among the Dark Star race sooner. If he could use this opportunity to kill a few more hall masters, that would obviously be for the best. In the Pantheon Divine Hall, the prodigies gathered there all thanked Jian Chen from the bottom of their hearts. Their faces were filled with gratitude. The force that Jian Chen had displayed made them place even greater trust in this 5th hall master. Jian Chen remained calm. He slowly glanced past everyone. When he discovered that Jin Hong was no longer among them, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. He knew that the 100 Saints city would probably experience an unprecedented disaster soon. It was even possible for the entire city to be massacred, where blood would flow as rivers. Making Jin Hong leave before this was obviously for the best. However, he spotted He Qianshan in the crowd very soon, and he immediately frowned by an undetectable amount. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.